kids that attend that school don't even live in that neighborhood.
Right. So that's definitely
That part.
yes,
Okay. As the young people say, facts.
absolutely.
Okay. I'm done. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? And, I appreciate that you've been here 2 weeks. I've been trying to work with Superintendent Hara myself on some different issues that we'll probably see in the county at some later date. But we are very involved in our education within our schools. So hopefully you'll be here 20 years from now and we can build a future for our students, because we do have a lot of amazing students, but we also have some things that we need to do better. And Commissioner Weekly and I in particular we had Dr. Cram as our principal, and he ended up going on to be superintendent, and we've been through about 15 since then. So we've told Dr. Hara he's accountable. So I'm going to call him and say, what he did to you was wrong by making you come here after 2 weeks, but you did okay. So you held your own.
Thank you.
Nevada, yeah, because we were struggling not to say anything.
Totally get it. Forgive my liquid passion also. But definitely I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you and present this.
Thank you. And we'll see you quarterly because we get an update. Absolutely. So any new things that are coming up or any reorganization concerns
yes.
For the commissioners, as well as things that you're seeing that are probably more of had I expressed concerns on reorganization as a whole, right. But then when I learned that they got rid of the truancy programs because it was a principal's choice, I don't think that should get to be a choice, right?
Absolutely.
But so we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Item 85, that the Board of Clark County Water Reclamation District Board of Trustees accept the business impact statement pursuant to NRS 237.090 for the lift station design and construction standards first edition, and determine that the proposed standards do not impose a significant economic burden on affected businesses or take other action as appropriate.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Sager-Bloom for items 85 and 86.
It's a public hearing. Do I have to say anything other than move to approve?
Not a public hearing, but you might let him do his presentation.
Do you have a presentation?
No, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, there is no presentation. Just to share with the group, this is the second step of a three-step process in which May 7th we will have a public hearing on the standards before you.
Having heard the public hearing, it's not a public hearing, I move for approval.
This is a learning process for all of us. This was his first time presenting for his committee. So just ask the board if they have any questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And if they don't have any questions, then you go ahead and accept the motion.
Commissioner Knapp, do you have any questions? Commissioner Jones, do you have any questions?
Well, you don't have to do individual. You don't have to do roll call. Now listen. This tutorial session, it can't take all day now, Commissioner. Listen.
So Commissioner Sager-Bloom, just for clarification, your motion is to accept the business impact statement before us today. Is that correct?
That's correct, unless the commissioners have any questions.
There you go. Now, nobody has any questions.
Right. That's my motion, so I move for approve.
In the future, ask one of us if we will make a motion.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Commissioner Weekly, would you make a motion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I will.
I just wanted I had to know the special words to get him.
There you go. You're getting it there. Because she trips me up over here, so I'm trying to help you. All right? So I'll make a motion to follow staff's recommendation for approval.
All right.
You heard the motion.
Oh, so I'm chairman of this now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Now I didn't realize what I was doing. Okay. Move. So
say you've heard the motion.
I've heard the motion. Please cast your vote.
There you go. There you go. Good job. All right. Now next time you're on your own, okay?
Which is now. Item 86, that the Clark County Water Reclamation District Board of Trustees accept the business impact statement pursuant to NRS 237.090 for the Southern Nevada Design and Construction Standards for Wastewater Collection Systems 4th edition and determine that the proposed design standards do not impose a significant economic burden or on affected businesses or take other action as appropriate.
All right, any commissioners have any questions? Does anyone want to make a motion for approval?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I make a motion to approve item 86.
All right, please cast your votes. And all this time I thought Maryland did the special things. It's simple.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Next, we have item 87, which is to receive a report from the Clark County Off-Highway Vehicle Advisory Committee to approve and adopt a resolution supporting the designation of 3 off-highway vehicle recreation areas on the Bureau of Land Management land through federal legislation and direct staff accordingly.
Hello, Commissioners. Jody Bechtel. I'm the Assistant Director of the Department of Air Quality. And the item before you is to hear a report from the Off-Highway Vehicle Advisory Committee. That committee was formed by this commission in June of 2018. It is comprised of 10 members of the OHV public, representing a variety of OHV interests. The committee has met every month since August of 2018, and those meetings have all been conducted under Nevada open meeting law and have been a public process. Staff will be presenting to you the report, but we do have a member of the advisory committee if you have questions for them directly. And I will turn it over to Kimberly to introduce herself and give the presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kimberly Jenkins with Department of Air Quality. Let's see, so I'm just going to go through a little bit of background quickly. So the purpose of the OHV Advisory Committee is to make recommendations to the BCC regarding the enhancement and preservation of off-highway vehicle recreation in Clark County. This is a very broad mandate. The deliberations so far have included a desire to protect in federal legislation OHV areas that are already in use. So what's been discussed a lot is kind of the concept of death by 1,000 cuts. So there's been a lot of land use designations going on in discussions, solar applications, disposal areas. So this committee has been looking for some parity with all those other designations that get done. They're looking for protection for OHV recreation. There's also been some desire to identify new areas for OHV recreation that can offset some of the loss from all the other land use designations. So one of the actions that was previously taken by the committee in December was a recommendation that the board adopt a resolution to urge the congressional delegation to include in a future lands bill the formal federal designation of Logandale Trails as an off-highway vehicle recreation area. So as you may be aware, the Bureau of Land Management has a resource management plan that has been undergoing a revision, a process that's been on again and off again. But in this resource management plan, there were some alternatives under consideration that would have reduced OHV recreation in Logandale Trails. So the designation that this board took, the resolution that this board adopted in December would just protect that area from further encroachment and protect it for future use as recreation. So we're looking at some additional areas today to do a similar designation. Shortly after that resolution passed, the committee began looking at other areas that could be designated for protection in a future lands bill. The recommendation that we're considering today was adopted at the January 16th meeting of the advisory committee and was originally scheduled to be heard at the February 19th board meeting, but was pulled at the last minute due to some feedback we had received from the environmental community and from the OHV advisory committee members themselves. So we're back now to address some of that feedback that we heard and provide you with some staff recommendations for how we can address those concerns. So the recommendation that is under consideration today is to consider supporting the establishment of 3 additional recreation areas through federal legislation. The 3 areas are indicated on this map in the black hatching, and they are in the vicinity of Nelson Hills, Laughlin, and Sandy Valley. A key part of the recommendation from the committee is to also require that BLM complete travel and transportation planning processes and recreation area management planning processes within 2 years of the date the bill is signed into law. This is an incredibly aggressive timeline, but we feel that this is a very important inclusion in order to make these areas useful and usable soon after designation. So I'm going to talk about each of these areas in a little detail and some of the concerns that we've heard and our recommendations for addressing those concerns. The first area up is Nelson Hills. In 1998, the BLM designated the Nelson Hills area as a special recreation management area, which is a designation where the recreation opportunities of an area are recognized for their unique values. And management of the area prioritizes recreation over other uses. So Nelson Hills was specifically designated by the BLM as a special recreation management area for the purpose of competitive off-road vehicle events. This use was subject to consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the purpose of protecting desert tortoise habitat in the area. And included with that designation was authorization for the BLM to permit up to 9 speed-based events per year during the desert tortoise inactive season. So the map that is shown up here on the screen now is BLM's existing route inventory for the Nelson Hills area. And so as you can see, the area is very heavily used for OHV recreation. It's been used for decades for both casual and organized events. So the first concern we've heard regarding the proposed Nelson Hills OHV recreation area is that it was designated by Fish and Wildlife Service as critical habitat for the desert tortoise in 1994. And that's correct. The underlying designation for Nelson Hills is critical habitat, and that designation occurred in 1994. But following that, in 1994, the BLM took action in 1998 through their resource management plan to designate it as the special recreation management area for the purpose of permitting competitive off-highway vehicle events. At that time, in 1998, BLM consulted with the Fish and Wildlife Service on that resource management plan, and the Fish and Wildlife Service wrote a biological opinion that stated, essentially, as long as you use the area under certain conditions, we're okay with the OHV recreation occurring in critical habitat. So the decision to use this area for OHV recreation was made way back in 1998, and it has been used extensively since then. I'd also just like to note that the proposed designation through federal legislation would simply continue the existing use of this area and provide an additional level of protection to preserve it for use by OHV recreation enthusiasts. Furthermore, this designation would still be subject to review under NEPA and the Endangered Species Act following the passage of any legislation. So the second concern we've heard regarding Nelson Hills is that the area contains lands that have been identified as having wilderness characteristics and a proposed expansion to the El Dorado Wilderness area. So the inventory of lands with wilderness characteristics was a mandate under the previous presidential administration that directed BLM to take inventory of wilderness quality lands during any land use planning process. This was essentially a desktop exercise, and it was never intended to result in de facto wilderness designations. Wilderness can only be designated by an act of Congress. Further, the mandate still gave BLM the authority to permit alternative uses of these areas that had been identified as having wilderness characteristics. And in the BLM's 2014 draft of their resource management plan revision, BLM was proposing to manage this area at a prescription level 3. And so what that means for the BLM is that they would have prioritized and emphasized other multiple uses over the wilderness qualities. So staff recommendation to address this potential concern would be to simply remove the lands identified as having wilderness characteristics from the proposed OHV recreation area boundary. The third concern we've heard regarding Nelson Hills is that this area contains the Kehoe Canyon area of critical environmental concern, and this is correct. So the Kehoe Canyon ACEC was designated by the BLM for protection of significant natural and cultural resources. So our staff recommendation to address this concern is to simply eliminate the Kehoe Canyon ACEC from the boundary of the proposed Nelson Hills OHV recreation area. Another concern we've heard from members of the OHV community regarding Nelson Hills is they have questioned whether the current boundary of the Nelson Hills OHV recreation area can be extended to the south, because it currently cuts off some loop trails that are used in special events. Members of the community have asked if the boundary could be moved further south to incorporate these trails. Staff does not recommend that change because the area to the south is currently designated as the Paiute El Dorado ACEC, which is considered an important tortoise conservation area, and it is also one of the areas where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service currently does desert tortoise population monitoring that counts towards eventual recovery and delisting of the population. So we don't recommend making that change. And the final concern we've heard pertaining to the Nelson Hills area is that it is too close to the Arabita Peaks and El Dorado wilderness areas. So the county has been very clear with environmental advocates on this issue for many years, and that is that wilderness designations are not intended to include a buffer area. The boundary is the boundary. Furthermore, it's stated in every congressional act that is designated wilderness in southern Nevada that a wilderness area is not entitled to a buffer. So there's no such thing as too close because there's no legally required buffer. But on top of that, the planning processes that would be included in the language of the legislation would help to address some of these potential impacts. So the BLM travel and transportation plans and the recreation area management plans that would be required by the legislation would allow BLM to work towards minimizing impacts to nearby wilderness by designating routes, having them properly signed, and having educational materials available to the public. The second area that the committee is recommending for designation as an OHV recreation area is in the vicinity of Laughlin. So this area was also designated by BLM as a special recreation area management plan in the 1998 resource management plan. And it has also been heavily used for both casual and organized OHV recreation for decades. One thing of note is that in July of 2018, the BLM did prepare an environmental assessment to look at races and other organized events in this Laughlin area, and that environmental assessment resulted in a finding of no significant impact. So the first concern we've heard regarding the proposed Laughlin OHV recreation area is that the boundary includes the proposed Hyco Wash area of critical environmental concern. So the Hyco Wash ACEC was nominated by BLM to protect migratory bird habitat and cultural and historical sites. The designation of this ACEC is proposed in some of the alternatives of the 2014 draft resource management plan revision, but it should be noted that that resource management plan revision has not been completed, so this remains only a proposed ACEC. It has never been designated. One potential remedy would be to eliminate the entire ACEC boundary from the OHV recreation area. However, when staff presented this idea to the OHV Advisory Committee, several members were concerned that doing this would eliminate an important access entry point and would cut off access to several loop trails that are used in racing events and other organized events. So staff conferred with the Bureau of Land Management regarding the proposed Hyco Wash ACEC and to see if there was another potential remedy that we could come up with. The BLM has stated that the most valuable part of this proposed ACEC is the eastern portion of the wash where it starts to become highly channelized. That is the area that provides valuable migratory bird habitat. And so they felt that the western portion of the area that is relatively flat has experienced high levels of use and has been heavily impacted over the last few decades and is less valuable for its natural resource values. So our proposed remedy here is to eliminate the eastern portion of the proposed Hyco Wash ACEC from the Laughlin boundary, but to retain the westernmost portion that would keep the access entry point and retain the loop trails for use by the OHV recreation community. So the second concern we've heard about the Laughlin area includes another proposed ACEC called the Granite Springs ACEC. So this one was proposed in BLM's latest version of the draft resource management plan shortly before that plan was put on hold. It was nominated, again, to protect cultural resources, prehistoric art, and wildlife habitat. Again, this is only a proposed ACEC, and it has not been designated, but our staff recommendation here to address this concern is to simply eliminate this proposed ACEC from the boundary. Another concern about the Laughlin area is that racing in this area creates a significant amount of dust in the nearby residential areas of Laughlin. We believe that these types of impacts can be identified and appropriately mitigated through subsequent planning processes, including the travel and transportation planning and recreation area management planning that will both be required by the draft legislation language. BLM would also have the opportunity to identify and require additional mitigation measures for race events through the special recreation permitting process. And the final concern we've heard about the Laughlin area is that it is too close to Bridge Canyon Wilderness. Again, we maintain that there's no such thing as too close because wilderness designations are not intended to include a buffer area. And further, again, these travel and transportation planning processes, recreation area management planning processes can work towards identifying where these impacts might occur and mitigating any of those potential impacts. So the final area under consideration today is in the vicinity of Sandy Valley, and this would be a newer area for prioritizing OHV recreation. It currently consists of approximately 40,754 acres and is designated by BLM as multiple use land. So unlike the other two, it's not a special area, special management recreation area. Casual OHV recreation occurs throughout this area, but it's not been as intensively used for racing and other speed-based events in the past as the first two areas that we've talked about earlier. The first concern we've heard about the proposed Sandy Valley area is that it is too close to the Desert Tortoise large-scale translocation site. And so this is the area shown by the red dotted line on the map. The large-scale translocation site is an area that has been used for a few decades now for tortoises that have been taken off of construction sites or pet tortoises that people no longer wanted. They've been relocated to this area. So it is currently fenced along I-15 and its northern and southern boundaries, but there's never been a fence installed along the western boundary where most of this red dotted line is shown, because there's a natural geological barrier that prevents desert tortoises from moving further to the west. Again, here we believe that subsequent planning processes can identify any additional protective measures that are needed to protect tortoises within the large-scale translocation site. And these designations will again be subject to review under NEPA and the Endangered Species Act following the passage of any legislation. And then the final concern that we've heard about the Sandy Valley area is that it is too close to the community of Good Springs. Our proposed recommendation to address this concern is simply to move the boundary approximately 1 mile south to move it away from the community of Good Springs. This revised boundary is shown with the blue line on the map. Sorry, my pages are sticking. Just to summarize, the three proposed OHV recreation areas would remain BLM administered lands. So BLM would still retain full authority to manage the natural resources within these areas and implement any mitigation measures that are necessary to protect those natural resources. The designations would still be subject to review under several federal environmental laws, including the National Environmental Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act, the National Historic Preservation Act, Archaeological, Historic, and Preservation Act, and other applicable laws. Many of these laws also require consultation and coordination with other resource agencies and cooperating agencies, and coordination with affected Native American tribes. And finally, many of these laws also require public review and comment period. Subsequent review and planning processes that would be required following the passage of any federal legislation to designate these areas would include an amendment to the BLM's resource management plan. Development of travel and transportation plans for each area, and development of recreation area management plans for each area. Additionally, organized events would require further analysis by the BLM before BLM could issue a special recreation permit. These planning processes all require review under NEPA and consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service under the Endangered Species Act. So to summarize the various modifications that staff is recommending, to differentiate these areas from what the original committee recommendation is, we recommend that lands designated as Keyhole Canyon ACEC be removed from the proposed Nelson Hills area. We recommend removal of lands designated as having wilderness characteristics from the Nelson Hills area. We recommend removal of the eastern portion of the proposed Heiko Wash ACEC from the Laughlin area. And we recommend that the proposed Granite Springs ACEC also be removed from the Laughlin area. And then finally, we recommend that the boundary of the Sandy Valley area be moved towards the south to make it further away from the community of Good Springs. And with that, I will take any questions.
And we do have some questions, so I'm going to start with Commissioner Gibson.
In respect of the areas that you're proposing to remove where there is an ACEC impacted, do you have a sense of the acreage that you're removing in each one of them or all together?
I do, but I do not have those figures with me.
Could you get those to me?
Yes, I will.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
And it's a small amount.
It is small, yes.
But it makes a big difference.
Yeah, over all three areas, I think it's less than 10,000 acres, and all three areas together are about 110,000 acres.
Yeah, I think it's important to make that statement because there's a lot of discussion out there by people who've been in the area but haven't studied as intensively as you have or as the committee might have heard. So it's important to get a sense of what we're really talking about in terms of withdrawing or moving boundaries so that we don't impact ACECs. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Naft, and then Commissioner Jones, either one. Commissioner Jones.
So overall question with regards to the removal of certain portions that were proposed as ACECs as opposed to having been designated, are those areas that were proposed to be ACECs included in the ACECs that we put into the lands bill?
No, they are not.
So they're just no man's land
They're
at this
different
point?
ACECs.
Okay. Can you go back to the map for the Sandy Valley one? The second map. Either way. Thanks. So I guess I understand that the tortoises might not, that there's no fencing for the tortoises, and the tortoises won't be able to climb up the mountain. What is going to prevent OHV recreationists from encroaching into the tortoise area?
So that would be addressed through the travel and transportation planning process. That's a process whereby BLM will take an inventory of all the existing routes, identify routes that are appropriate for closure, and identify routes that are appropriate for certain activities. So some routes may only be appropriate for motorcycle use versus large class vehicles. But that process is where BLM will kind of identify where transportation is appropriate, where it's not appropriate, where roads should be open, where they should be closed. And that is, again, another public process that people will be able to have input on as well.
Okay. I'm just putting it out there. This is a new area as opposed to the other two, which are existing areas. And so when you're asking recreationists to go there anew, we need to make sure we put the safeguards in place to protect the existing conservation areas.
Okay. Commissioner Sagerblum, do you have anything? No? Your mic's on? Nope. Commissioner Naft? Kate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if you want to take some comments from the public first.
So here's what I'm gonna say. This is not a public hearing. However, if you would like to speak specifically to the items that are before us today, I will entertain you coming down. So, Mr. Fleming, I know you had some concerns about the Good Springs ones, and I think we addressed those, but it must be specific to the maps that are before us today. So come on down.
Thank you, Chair, and was this on? Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Patrick Donnelly, Nevada State Director with the Center for Biological Diversity. I think we have some concerns with designating potential off-highway vehicles in this way. I'm not sure it's clear what's being designated. An off-highway vehicle recreation area is not a BLM designation. It does not exist. There's no management prescriptions for what this would look like. It's not statutory. It's not in regulation. So in some ways, you all would be designating something that you're not exactly clear what it would be, because this would be a novel designation. The only existing similar designation was just enacted into law just a couple weeks ago in S47, and those were for OHV open areas in which OHVs could ride wherever they want, and those were in California. And so that's the only existing designation that's like this, but it's very different because the county is not proposing these be open areas. So I think there's some unclarity about what these designations would be. I think the fact that they are two of the areas are special recreation management areas currently is a very different thing from what you'd be designating. SERMAs are administrative designations, which can then be changed in the future as resource conflicts exist, wildlife gets protected, etc. Congressional designations would be permanent. They could not be changed except through a new act of Congress if circumstances on the ground changed. And I think that's a very different thing from the current management regimes in these areas. I think Commissioner Jones asked a very good question. I did off-highway vehicle restoration in desert tortoise habitat. That's how I got my start in the conservation community for about 7 years in the California desert. And we saw that when boundaries are drawn in an arbitrary fashion, they lead to bad results. The bottom line is if your boundary closing the area is at the bottom of a hill, you just can't stop people from driving off the hill. And BLM can do a management plan for it, but the management plan is often unenforceable, and frankly, just BLM has limited control over people's actions out there. So the idea that off-highway vehicle riders will stop at the bottom of the hill and not continue onward into that desert tortoise translocation site, I think is really quite flawed. I provided you all with a map of the critical habitat for the desert tortoise. This Nelson Hills unit encompasses critical habitat. Critical habitat is designated by the Fish and Wildlife Service as areas essential to the survival and recovery of endangered species. It's really not an appropriate place to permanently designate as an off-highway vehicle area. That area, Nelson Hills, is also sandwiched between the Boulder City Conservation Easement and the Paiute El Dorado ACEC. It's important connectivity, and making permanent decisions about it, like permanently designating it an off-highway vehicle area, will really potentially cause conflicts down the road as the conservation of the desert tortoise evolves going forward. So I urge you to, at the very least, cut out the critical habitat, but would prefer that you reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Mr. Fleming, did you want to speak?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Steve Fleming, 130 Pacific, Good Springs, Nevada. I was born in Las Vegas, grew up in Good Springs and Las Vegas, and I love our desert. Please come to our trail opening May 4th. It will give you a little idea what our community is about and the area that we really love, and find the borders of this particular, our area, which is interestingly called Sandy Valley, but the closest town that it impacts is Good Springs. I'm going to read this just so that I make it as short as possible. Thank you, guys, for your service. It's a tough job, and all your decisions affect my generation, my kids, my grandkids, and everyone beyond. It's a pretty heavy load. This issue before us has that weight. Several years ago, the board found that OHV activities in the valley were becoming intolerable. They decided that these activities were not compatible with community life, and OHVs were eliminated. A good solution for the valley. But where will the OHVs go? Would they have an effect on rural life and rural communities? Nellis Dunes came into existence, but other areas in the county certainly needed designated OHV areas, but action was minimal. The problem does not only affect districts with rural components, OHV drivers in our area come from every district, so it's really a county problem. I commend Commissioner Kirkpatrick for attempting to address this need. No one wants a DOHV area in their neighborhood. OHVs want to go everywhere. So it's a tough balance. Please pretend for a moment that you notice in the paper or online that an OHV designated area is being planned, and you say, wow, that's wonderful. We need some of these designated OHV areas. As you read a little further, you find that this designated OHV area is a half-mile from your house. What would you do? What would your reaction be? Well, that's what happened to our 120-year-old community. We have serious OHV area issues in our town already, as I've spoken to Commissioner Jones before. And so he's aware of it, and he's trying to help us. We have 200 plus residents, the oldest continuously operating school in Southern Nevada. 29 students are there currently. We are taxpayers. What can we do? We are asking the county to reconsider the border that is adjacent to our houses, and there has been some modification made. But if I can't imagine that we wouldn't be able to present some more information, which we were never allowed to. We're the most impacted community of any of the three areas, and we had no voice in any of the deliberation for establishing these areas.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fleming. I appreciate those comments. Mike, did you want to say anything, or are you good?
I just say hello to Dr. Fleming. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. It can be very easily modified and still give a lot of
Mr. Fleming, so thank you. Go ahead.
I didn't plan on saying anything, but I will. So I'm born in Nevada. I've lived in every part of the valley. So our purpose is to protect these areas so that there can't be other development, solar plants, wind farms to protect the rural nature of the area. So just appreciate your time. The staff did a great job of taking our mix mash of stuff and making it look great. And again, just thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Sagerblum.
I'd just like to make a comment. So this recommendation would go into federal statute, so it would be, we couldn't change it. I mean, to change it down the road, you would have to pass a law of Congress.
So here's what I would say is what we're trying to do, and I'll just put it out there because I've attended every damn meeting, and it's been painful. So we're seeing today that there is a lot of solar applications coming in. So the solar industry would like about 400,000 acres of Southern Nevada to go into their portfolio. The second piece is to the OHB communities, correctness is they have been losing over years different opportunities. So what we wanted to do was to find a way to at least give them some protections on where they can ride for the future, for future generations as a whole. But we also said with that comes travel management lanes so that we can protect the areas that are necessary. So our staff has looked at hundreds of shake files of different lands, different trails. And to be honest, what was found is that many of the trails, both for any recreation that are being used today, probably are not, should be used, right? So we were trying to find areas that had already been used, that working with the BLM, that made the most sense. So what we're trying to do is put something within our federal legislation that is broad enough but doesn't restrict us from pulling back through the travel management piece. So would it take an act of Congress? I think my personal opinion is, and maybe staff can help me, is that we could pull it back but we can never add to it. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, so that's relatively accurate, I would say. So the boundary would be the boundary, but BLM would still retain authority to manage the area within that boundary for the protection of various resources. So, for instance, if a new species were to become listed and habitat for that listed species was found in one of these OHV recreation areas, they'd still have the discretion to eliminate racing through that habitat area in order to protect a newly listed species, for example, as just one potential case scenario. Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
All right, so you mentioned that should a endangered species be discovered, but could we just designate areas as right now OHV, but allow them to be pulled back and made smaller during the future? Is there a new category of land we could have where we don't have to just lock it in one way or another? If that makes sense.
No, you lost me. So start over.
Okay.
I'll pay.
So I agree that we want to set these lands aside, and for now maybe say that OHV is appropriate, but to have a designation that doesn't say OHV forever, and then we or the BLM or somebody could pull it back and take OHV out of it down the road without having to go back to Congress.
So the intent right now on the table before you, if you will, is that the priority management direction for these areas would be to manage them for the purposes of OHV recreation, but it would not preclude the BLM from managing it for alternative purposes so long as that primary purpose was not impinged upon. So they could still... Yeah, so the boundary itself wouldn't change without an act of Congress, but they could still have leeway to manage the resources within that boundary.
To just follow up, so for example, if Good Springs, if this map shows OHV areas within half a mile of Good Springs, 10 years from now, they could say that's too close and we're going to pull back OHV from that area?
Yeah, BLM could make the decision to, for instance, reroute race courses to be further away from the community.
And also through the travel management component, we'll be able to have a further in-depth conversation with that particular community.
Yes. Yeah, all those additional planning processes are public, open processes. So Good Springs community would have ample opportunity through those processes as well to have their concerns.
And as I understand it, this is a recommendation to Congress, so Congress will have another chance to have a hearing on this, right?
Right.
So this is not the final decision, I don't think.
No.
Right. Okay.
But Dr. Fleming, I apologize. Could Dr. Fleming just come up and...
Nope. Dr. Fleming, you got to come to the microphone, state your name for the record.
Steve Fleming, 130 Pacific, Good Springs. If you identify a map, and so it takes 2 years or 3 years to do this implementation, that map will be public record, I presume. Basically, will it be used by people to say, hey, this is a county-mandated OHV area? I would say that that would be very likely. I mean, I can't imagine that they would not use that to say, you can't keep us out of here. This is an OHV area. Wouldn't that be something you would expect if you draw a map and the county approves it?
But we're not, so what we're saying is it has to go to Congress, which could take 9 months or 9 years. Quite frankly, the California bill took 20 years to get done. We're just seeing that we'd like to keep this on our radar, so if other things do come through, that there's an idea. So we're not posting it to the OHV committee. What I will tell you is what we learned is there's tons of people already out there on the Paraline roads today. I know that Senator Masto's team was out there, and she was surprised at all of the activity that's currently happening. We're just trying to send a map to Congress to say, here's what we'd like to see. There's no guarantee that they'll even agree with us, but we'd like to have that in there so that people are having that conversation as we go forward. So to your question on whether or not it's going to be posted and people are doing it, they're already doing it today. So there's no secret that they're out there today. But when we get to that point, if it actually passes Congress in some lifetime, then we'll work on the travel management, which in 2 years, and that's an aggressive, as we stated, time, that we're now already 5 years into the conversation. So, Commissioner Sagerflem, do you have anything else?
Just so my understanding is right now BLM controls this land and people are allowed to OHV.
Oh, yes, and that's why designated areas are very important, but if you designate an area, the county alone designates it, that becomes a designated area, especially during the time between this, for this implementation.
So let me have the attorney weigh in there. Let me have the attorney weigh in.
Jorgensen, DA's office. The county can't designate. This would be something that the board, if they approve the resolution, would then be requesting Congress to move forward in the, sometime in the future in some federal legislation, but the county can't designate. This is federal land and would remain federal land.
And I would just like to add one thing that just, so the designation of these areas, of course, as we stated many times, comes with a travel and transportation planning process, and through those efforts, there'll be signage and education for the public. And those would actually help to improve current conditions in the area. And so, yes, there's always going to be a few folks who disregard those rules. It happens now, and I expect it will continue to happen. But that doesn't seem like a reason to cut off OHV recreation altogether because of a few folks who will always disregard the rules no matter how many times we tell them what they are.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Gibson.
So one of the things that I think Dr. Fleming is concerned about is what we heard in the last OHV meeting, which was you got riders riding right in against homes, conflicting with traffic. I mean, it is a significant issue. Now, that doesn't mean, none of this means that the county can't make certain that the roadways are open and safe. This isn't designed to allow the OHV community. It itself does not want to overrun Good Springs. So the movement of the line a mile, I think that was what the proposal was, is intended to try and preserve the quality of life issues out there. But I think we always have the ability to make sure that we're not adversely affecting human life and safety. So I think that at the end of the day, the group of people that were represented around the table at the OHV committee represent organized, for the most part, organized travel on OHV routes and trails and that sort of thing. The casual stuff that happens out there may well be some of the worst impactful or most impactful adversely, but at the end of the day, this is not about so much that travel. The input that we got was more, in the meetings I attended, was more directed to the organized use of the trails and systems. I think one of the things that we have to recognize is there's an enormous and important part of our community that has at their homes these vehicles. They enjoy going out into the desert and riding them. Maybe there's something more we could do for the casual rider that would educate them better. But we're not in a position, and shouldn't be in a position, where we're really wanting to shut all this down. It is rather an effort to try and balance the interests, and it's a very difficult balancing test that you have to apply. Frankly, after I was there for a couple of meetings at the very beginning, I was there for a couple of meetings at the very end, and I was very much surprised that the people around that table were able to come to agreement, to be honest with you. And so my hat goes off to staff for managing that entire exercise, to the people who served on that committee for their commitment to really trying to work things out and accommodate the needs of the entire community. The thing that we need to do, I'll say again, is we need to make sure that the community of Good Springs is protected against travel that is conflicting, particularly conflicting with the health and safety of the neighborhoods out there, and it's really important to do that. I was born in Las Vegas. I've been to Good Springs more times than I can count, and we owe those people the responsibility to protect the quality of their lives out there. I think that the OHV community accepts and understands the need to do that. And I'm certain that people who plan these routes and submit their event applications to the BLM will be taking that into account. And they've heard it from us. They've heard it in the meetings that they conducted. So I think that we're going to have to rely upon the good faith of everybody involved. The OHV community's got to believe that they'll be able to continue to ride in Southern Nevada. The rest of the community, those who are concerned about the environmental issues, and frankly, there are a lot of people who are around that table that are OHV enthusiasts who are very much committed to the protection and the preservation of the environment. All of us and the rest of the community need to work together to make this happen in a way that doesn't have one side or the other back in here with the upper hand and the high ground. And the only way to prevent that is to have us all operating in good faith.
Thank you. Commissioner Naft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, we have to thank the advisory committee for the work they put in. Thank you for being here. Thank you, staff, for the laborious work you put in as well. And Mr. Donnelly and Dr. Fleming, I appreciate your comments and thank you for all the time and energy you've put in yourselves. I also have to especially thank our chairwoman who did attend, I believe, every one of these meetings and really hold everyone's hands and bring people together on a subject matter that is so difficult to do so. And then I also have to thank Mr. Gibson, who I think must have taken my notes because he said everything I had in my mind, so I appreciate it. And in the interest in saving time, let the record show that I second what his comments, and I do appreciate it, and I know how difficult this is, but I do want to be very clear that we have an extremely capable federal delegation of 6 members who are elected and serve our state well and effectively. And while I take this recommendation extremely seriously, it is just that. It is a recommendation to our federal delegation. So that being very clear and the comments that were already stated here being quite clear, I am inclined to support the resolution with the revisions offered in the staff's presentation and illustrated on the map, and I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Commissioner Naft has made a motion to adopt a resolution supporting the designation with staff's recommendations. Any further comments or questions? Commissioner,
I apologize. I'm new to the game, but I'll just say I'm voting for this, but it's with the understanding that this is not locking anything in at this point. It's sending a direction, but I do hope that there will be good faith in trying to protect areas like Good Springs and also do things at the bottom of mountains. Or hills. There's lots of in-betweens that we aren't really able to address at this point. We're talking about huge areas, but at the end of the day, protecting the desert and protecting our desert communities is, from my perspective, the most important.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, seeing no other comments, please cast your vote. Motion passes. Okay, we'll go to the final item.
Item 88 is to consider and approve the business impact statement pursuant to NRS Chapter 237 for the proposed amendments to Title 6, Chapter 6.12, and Title 7, Chapter 7.90, Hospitals and Other Medical Facilities, providing for licensure of hospitals, urgent medical centers, clinics, and laboratories, establishing requirements for medical facilities that offer emergency medical services, requiring certain medical facilities to be certified by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, providing for business license fees, providing for suspension, revocation, and non-renewal of business license for non-compliance and penalties, and providing for other matters properly related thereto.
Good afternoon, Ms. Chair. And
morning.
Commissioners, Jacqueline Holloway, Director of Business License. I just have a brief presentation and update, Ms. Chair, if you will allow me.
Sure, go ahead.
And just to reiterate, this proposed amendment will delete certain subsections in Chapter 6. It will also create a new regulated chapter to combine and upgrade the definitions and as well as provide for the licensure of hospitals, urgent medical facilities, clinics, and laboratories. In addition, it will also establish requirements for medical facilities that offer or advertise or hold themselves out as emergency medical services facilities. It will also require certain medical facilities to be certified by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, otherwise known as CMS, and most importantly, it will require that these emergency medical services or facilities accept payments for Medicare and Medicaid. The department only received one comment that was in opposition to the proposed amendment. We identified the issues that was listed in the opposition. In order to respect and respond to some of the issues, we modified the proposed amendment to include a grandfathering clause. So that grandfathering clause says at this point it will only impact businesses that obtain a business license after June 1st, 2019. So this is a going forward proposed amendment at this point. Ms. Chair, I have no other comments.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments? Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Holloway, what happens in the, let's say a business was grandfathered in, but then the management or ownership of the grandfathered business changes in part or in whole?
They would have to come into compliance with the ordinance.
Okay.
It would be considered a change of ownership.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Sagerblum.
I know there's legislation in Carson City. Is that, maybe this is a legal question, but would that grandfathering this in somehow impact how that legislation affects it?
I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ann.
We don't have the authority to supersede legislation. If the legislation would provide that they weren't grandfathered in, it would supersede our local ordinance.
Okay. And do we have applications pending that this ordinance will apply to?
We do not at this time.
Okay. I'm just concerned that we're grandfathered in something we maybe, if we just postpone the ordinance till after the legislation, but.
Commissioner Sagerblum, I brought this issue, and I tried to bring it 2 years ago before we got this far down to it, but what we're seeing is that and I've met with the current applicant, and they've agreed to go above and beyond with some type of certification. So regardless of whether the state passes, what we didn't want to do is put an alarm system out there that this was okay kind of practice to do within our valley. We wanted to set some regulations so that in the interim, regardless of what happens at the state, that we had some rules in place. So we have seen interest. I think that when I brought this up the first time, there was another company from Texas, not this one, that came to the podium and said, oh, they were interested in doing these type of venues. So we were just trying to protect ourselves in the short run because we all know that just because the legislature's hearing the bill today doesn't mean it's going to make it on that final day. So
that is the truism of the century, right?
In fact, I'm hoping some of it does, but that's beside the point.
So you said that they have offered to go above. Are they talking about doing Medicare or something like that?
Yes.
Yes,
I
there
think
is
they're
a
actively
certification.
working on their CMS certification. Yes, sir. So this avoids pop-up hospitals going forward. That's what we're hoping to do. That's our purpose.
But the current one said they would go through for certification?
Yes, and they are grandfathered in.
So your question is the current one, and you'll see in the ordinance, and they'll actually testify on the record that they're willing to go to come up to snuff with what we're proposing. But there's a couple different certifications, so they're working towards all of that now.
All right. And And this is just, that will be next when we vote on it.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes. Yep. Commissioner Weekly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the conditions of having these hospitals or pop-ups or whatever they call themselves go above and beyond the call of duty. The concern that I've had in the past is that we've had individuals go to certain commissioners in their districts, and this is prior to many of the new commissioners coming on now, but just talk about establishing those businesses in those areas. And I'm always constantly reminding this board that you are a board of trustees of a hospital, and that we want to make sure that if they are going to operate, that they operate with the understanding that, you know, there are responsibilities that come with it, and there will be challenging times. And as we look at Medicaid and Medicare and those particular issues there, we've struggled with that over the years, and we're in a place now at UMC that we're okay. We're in a good space right now, but let's be quickly reminded we can always go backwards and find ourselves with that huge deficit that we were faced with at one point. And so not to sit here and want to be such a huge obstacle in the way of those out there that want to go in this particular industry, that's fine. But I also, too, am very cognizant and making sure that we don't give away the baby in the bathwater and put ourselves in harm's way. So, Madam Chair, I just want to put that out there, too. I know you've had meetings with a number of them who have come to you, and I appreciate just the challenges you've put in front of them in terms of making sure that they go above and beyond, that it's not just something that they can come in and cash grab and then send money out of state, but yet we're still sitting here with the carnage of UMC. So, thank you. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weekly. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept the business impact statement.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Weekly has made a motion to accept and approve the business impact statement. Seeing no further discussion, please cast your vote. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Madam Chair, item 89 is closed door session. We do not have any items for closed door, and item number 90 has been deleted, so we can go to public comment at this point in time.
So this is the second time set aside for public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on public comment, please come forward. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment. And for the commissioners, tomorrow is going to be probably a lengthy meeting, so we will take a break at 11:45 tomorrow for a half an hour, just so you're prepared. Seeing that, we'll go ahead and go into recess until tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you.
I'm proud.
As concertgoers were being hit by gunfire, police officers kept arriving and started taking fire themselves, including a veteran member of the force who took a bullet to his neck.
A day doesn't go by, and it's crazy to think that it's almost been a year already.
We were dealing with somebody that had been too intoxicated, got him a cab, and as we're getting ready to walk back into the event, that's when we hear that noise, the repeat of gunfire, like it just kept going. After like a few moments, somebody said somebody was injured inside. That's when we knew.
When the shots first started coming out, I remember sitting, like crouching down at the wall when we were taking cover, and I remember telling myself, it's gonna hurt, you're probably gonna get shot.
I felt a burning sensation, but when there's a threat somewhere else, you're kind of focused. And it wasn't until my partner Tara saw that I was bleeding all over when I was trying to keep everybody down.
And I look, and right in his neck, I could see, the blood and everything. I instantly go to put my hand on his neck. And in that moment, I knew that he was going to be okay. I wasn't going to let him, fail that night.
Kneel down.
There was an officer that had some gauze and whatnot, so we said, yes, we need that.
You're okay. Everybody's yelling, go get him the medical, get him the medical. And when you feel so helpless because you're being pinned down, I was like, I'm not leaving.
All the different people in the concert, they were so worried about him, and he just kept saying, don't worry, I'm fine, I'm fine. We got to get you out of here.
And at that point, we were just pinned down, so the one thing that we had was a bunch of scared civilians around us.
We formed up a team with some other sergeants and officers that were right there, and we got elements of 5, and we were covering them. And right after that, he sat down. And I looked at him, I said, okay, it's your time to go. We got to get you help. After the hospital, he didn't even want to get any type of pain medicine, morphine, anything, because he wanted to get back out there and continue to help and fight. And I am so thankful that I was working that event with him. He just really showed that night his true colors of how strong he is, the true warrior that he is. And I just see such a bright future for him.
I have to tell you, I've been born and raised in Las Vegas, and it wasn't until October 1st is when I finally realized how close and how small our town really is. Like, a god-awful mess that night. That was probably like the light that I saw that night.
You know, all the blood drives, all the donations just pouring in, everybody coming forward to support police. It was huge. It was something that this community needed after such a horrific, tragic event. He made it home, and he fought through it, and he was a true warrior. And, just seeing some of the people there, you know, like, it's just knowing that we made it through, and we do what we do every day because we won, and we will continue to win and protect our community.
I have to say I love what I do. I said it, you know, I never want to get shot at again, but I love being a police officer. I love protecting this community. I love being able to help people that need help. And once people are in need, I want to be there for them all the time.
Also injured that night was a young Metro officer who had been wearing the badge for just 2 days. His field training officer was instrumental in saving his life.
Brady, he was a second-day officer. You know, he was 2 days out of the academy, and we find ourselves in the middle of an active shooter under a barrage of gunfire.
First thing you hear is coming down the street, you just hear the sounds of the gunfire.
Somebody in the BP, can you tell me where it's coming from?
Plan was to set up a strike team to go in and find the guy, but as soon as we got out of the car, he focused all his fire on us. It was just all around you, just felt like it was coming from everywhere, top, down, left, right, it just felt like it was coming from everywhere.
He looks over at me and he says, you know, where's it coming from? And he kind of pops his head up a little bit, and at that moment he took a round.
I got shot! All right! Where? All right, move! We got casualties!
One of the rounds came and hit me in the back of my shoulder, went through my arm, out my bicep area, went into my chest, and shot down my body.
We need to get to medical. I knew he needed medical attention. I didn't know how bad it was. There was really no option. You know, at that time, that kid, that was my only priority. But we started moving north on the boulevard, and I started pushing him in front of me as much as I could.
As we're running down the street, the guy took his fire on the two of us running down the street still, so as we're running, he's still shooting at us.
By redirecting that fire off that crowd, we guaranteed we saved lives.
I didn't know I was hitting the chest, and he saw I was, so he knew he had to get me to medical immediately.
I gotta get you to ambulance.
At that point, it changed everything. It was a matter of minutes. My absolute focus was on Brady at that point. I mean, there was nothing else for me to do. You know, I looked across the street and I could see a couple patrol vehicles, and I started pushing Brady across the street. I took somebody's car.
I'm taking his car!
We hit the freeway, and we were at UMC within minutes. But it felt like I was driving to Utah, and I couldn't allow him to lose consciousness, so I started asking him about his life, you know, his family, his girlfriends, his pets, anything I could do to get him talking.
How many girlfriends you got, bro? Only one? Her name's Jordan. She's sexy? Yeah, she is. Right on. What is Jordan like?
And I was fortunate with Brady. You know, he's a tough kid. He's one of these people that have a long career, and he's going to do something amazing in his career, and hopefully this is the worst thing that ever happens to him. And get that out of the way at day 2, that's fantastic. I mean, he showed a lot of heart that night, a lot of heart, and you can't teach that to somebody. His parents did a great job with him. I think the hardest part about the whole thing is just the fact that it happened, and you've got to be willing to give everything to make sure that even if you don't go home, somebody else does.
Everyone coming together and jumping in and doing a part, and the way the community came together afterwards, and all the outreach and the support everyone gave the following days and weeks and months afterwards. I mean, I grew up in Vegas, and it's cool to see how such a big place can come together and be one.
Ultimately, it was the presence of police inside the hotel that brought the attack to an end. Here's a look at how police officers identified the threat and made their approach.
1692 means we got shots fired. 4:15 at the Route 291. Sounded like an automatic firearm. We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the fairgrounds. I can't see anything. Stay in here. Stay in here. No, stay here. No. Stay here. Hey, security. Where's security? You guys stay in here. I am in the casino, babe. No, they're 32. 32? Yeah, 32. Hey, okay. Do we have access to get into that room? What do you want to do? You want to make entry? We're going to have to. We're going to have to, yeah. I think everybody else is pinned outside. I don't know. I don't know if it's a pellet or a 22 or... Do we have access to this room? The double doors on the very end. 3.
Clear,
let's move back. We'll clear left and then we'll go up.
And all I could hear was automatic gunfire over the radio.
Okay. You guys with him, go to the stairwell.
We had thousands of people that were getting shot at, and I knew that we couldn't get them aid until I made this room safe. So, unfortunately, that's a risk that we had to take. We didn't really discuss it. We just did it.
Okay, I'm going to hold on this door, okay? Right.
But I think, when you're in that moment, you focus on what needs to be done. And we all knew what needed to be done.
We hung breaches on the door. I covered him. He hung the breach. We backed up into the small area on the stairwells that we were staged, and we then blew the door.
We didn't know who was in that room, who was behind that door. We just knew that there were so many incidents going on down on the strip that we had to take care of this problem here.
And I could see a big rifle just past the door on the ground. So I called that out to Levi. He was low, I was high. I had a rifle, he had his, and we're looking through the door, and we're kind of calling out some of the stuff that we could see initially, and then we made the decision to make entry.
Okay, cover on that. In with you.
And I knew at that point in time it was pivotal for us, and it was a game changer for us to do what we did.
Among the heroes on 1 October was an off-duty Metro police officer who paid the ultimate price. During a recent ceremony, Charleston Hartfield was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and Medal of Valor for protecting other concertgoers.
Most people know Charleston Hartfield by his courageous actions taken on that fateful Sunday evening of October 1st, 2017. Officer Hartfield not only saved many innocent lives that night by his leadership and calm demeanor, but he ensured his wife's safety so she could go on to raise their 2 wonderful children, Isaiah and Savannah. Yes, Charlie was a hero, but he was much more than that. He was my co-worker, friend, and also my brother. I still remember his first day out of field training when he came to our day shift squad at Southeast Area Command. As he walked into the briefing room, I noticed he had 2 backpacks. One was on his back, and he was carrying the other one with his right hand. When we made eye contact, I asked him if he was coming to work or going to college. He just gave me that unforgettable Charlie grin, and from that point on, we became friends with an unbreakable bond. Charlie was the most squared-away junior officer I've ever worked with in my 15-year career with Metro. If I was dispatched to a violent call and I knew Charlie was my backup unit, that would be one less thing I would have to stress over because I knew I was in good hands. I had great times working with him over the years, from patrol to community policing. I am blessed to have known and worked with Charlie for as long as I did. He was a man of faith and conviction, and I will never forget him as long as I live. There is a verse in the Bible in John 15:13, which I think represents the integrity and character of my friend. It says, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Rest in peace, Charleston Vernon Hartfield, You will be missed. On behalf of the department, we proudly present the Purple Heart to the family of Officer Charleston Hartfield. Thank you for allowing him to serve this community. He made such an indelible impression everywhere he worked. Thank you.
Coping with the magnitude of 1 October is something all of us will have to deal with forever. Police Captain Harry Fagel uses poetry as a form of expression. Here, he is performing his composition entitled, The Route.
We need contrast to be human. Right versus wrong, the meek and the strong, the well-off and the poor, and the list goes on and on. Good versus evil, though, has always been a tough one. Definitions range up and down the scale, and without fail, someone else's bad is inevitably someone else's good. Except in those rare moments of sainthood, when someone reaches past the limits of human understanding and commanding and standing, they inspire us all. Or horribly, in those rare moments of true evil, when someone reaches past the limits of human depravity, the darkest of cavities, the densest of gravities, they destroy us all. Music spinning in the beautiful night air, without a care, lovers dance and sway. Today is a special day, time tucked away for this moment of peace and love and grace. People standing close and closer as the stage pours noise out and down, basking and asking for truth. The throng gathers closer and closer, the moonlit night pressing on their skin like happy thoughts and goals reached. When firecracker noise becomes jackhammer noise, becomes gunfire, raining needles of deadly lead from the sky like a sudden cloudburst in hell. He who shall remain unnamed stands on the precipice, lording it up over the tiny ant-like figures. 500 yards away, he sways and reloads and fires bolt, launching backward, firing pin, locking back, springing forward, striking the primer, and the piece of sadness at over 1,000 miles per hour, at 1,000 feet per second, squirts from the sky and strikes one, and then another, then another, then another innocent concert goer. Blood, chaos, and confusion blossoming like a poison flower. The petals spilling to the ground in freshets of pain. Reloads and fires, picks up another gun and fires, reloads and fires, picks up another gun and fires, reloads, and soon 1,000 times this process repeated. As 58 souls climb out of broken and battered corpses and ascend the staircase to heaven. Over 500 more bleed and sob from broken bones and shattered lives, and his answer to the solemn cries is to shoot himself in the face. How in the evil here does the aforementioned sainthood rise to smash back the blasphemy this man wrought here? How the balance is made, the tally paid, the yin and yang rebound from such terror. It is in the dreaming hearts of the remainders, the survivors, and first responders where the good floods in, bearing evil under a pile of saving lives from such murder. Police officers immediately shielding and putting themselves in the way of the attack. Off-duty soldiers and cops and firemen reacting swiftly and carrying people away from danger. Regular citizens who, risking their very lives, took a pause to help, driving the masses of wounded to the hospitals. Where caring doctors and nurses slaved away to save the dying and give them chances at another day, another day, another day. Other cops, fearless and with the courage of lions, run up the stairs and explode the door, forcing the thing inside who watched on spy cameras to give up and die by suicide. It is in our innate selves we conquer the evil in the world, in our ability to overcome, to begin again, to start anew with a sense that in the end, evil is always laying there, bleeding out. Our heroes are here, not in some comic book. Every day they face down the nightmares the rest of us carefully tuck into our mind basements and try to forget. Take a moment and picture the women and men in tan and blue and white and green and badge beholden or medicine trained. We are so lucky, so very lucky to have them. Saints who erase the evil and let us all know light conquers dark, and we can again someday, today, rejoice. Thank you.
We're going to end our special program with a look at just some of the 1 October heroes. Sheriff Joe Lombardo proudly awarded Medals of Honor and Valor during this year's Best of the Badge ceremony. Thank you for watching. Your support means the world to us.
wanted to become a police officer because I wanted to serve my community, and I wanted to make my place I live a safer place.
I grew up in a bad neighborhood, and I wanted to make it more livable for younger generation.
The short version, because I don't like bullies or other people that victimize innocent citizens in the community or in general. I've always been that protective type person with my siblings, and so that kind of geared me towards law enforcement career.
You know what, my favorite thing was the white tiger that got out up in the northwest part of town, and I got to be part of the crew that got to get it back in its cage. So it's pretty nice to get a tiger off the streets.
Listen, when I was growing up, small kid in a small town, I wanted to be a cop. I can't really say why. It was just something that really interested me, and that's what I wanted to do. So that's what I went to college for. And back in New York, economy was bad, nobody was hiring. I was looking, and I found the Metropolitan Police Department. And fortunately for me, after testing, they gave me a job offer.
Metro is not about the cars, the buildings, the headquarters. It's about the people, and it's about us treating the community properly and doing the job that we do to help them have a better life. And we do it every day here, and we do a great job at it. I'm so proud of Metro. I couldn't have picked a better career.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
On the next edition of Clark County Chronicles, a long-time after-school program has a new place for young boxers to train, thanks to Commission Chair Marilyn Kirkpatrick and some community partners. Commissioner Jim Gibson hosted another job fair in District G. We'll tell you more. And it was Java with Jones at a neighborhood coffee shop in District F. Those stories and more coming up on the next edition of Clark County Chronicles, right here on Clark County Television.
You're watching Clark County Television.
It's the one place in Las Vegas where continuous growth brings new adventures. Sometimes improvement means putting things back the way they were. We take the sneeze out of allergy season, and there are many more stories at the Springs Preserve, where all that matters is what's elemental. Philosophy, mission, and even its very physical design, we've patterned the Springs Preserve after nature itself. That can be challenging because one defining characteristic of nature is that it's ever changing. Well, now as we enter our 12th year, it's rewarding to look around and consider all that's changed since the beginning. But we're not stopping here. We're in the midst of making several improvements and adding exciting new attractions.
When the Springs started 12 years ago, I don't think the founders envisioned it to be a static place. This is really going to be a living institution. While preserving the history of the state and the city of Las Vegas, we also want to be on the cutting edge of showcasing the latest innovations in sustainable living, environmental design.
The Springs Preserve was never intended to be a one-and-done type of visitor experience. If your only visit was back around the time of our opening, you'd hardly recognize us today. In the ensuing years, we've added several major new attractions.
One of them is the Desert Soul. It's a 750-foot ultra-efficient model home that was built by UNLV students in 2013 as part of the U.S. Department of Energy Solar Decathlon. In 2015, we had 2 exhibits come online here, Waterworks and Boomtown 1905. Waterworks shows the journey water takes from starting on the slopes of the Colorado Rocky Mountains and makes its way to Las Vegas and eventually to your tap. It's that journey broken down. Another exhibit is Boomtown 1905. We recreated a streetscape of various buildings that were there then, like the Railroad Depot, the Arizona Club, which was a great saloon back in the day. There's also 4 original cottages that were given by the railroad to senior workers to lure them from the comforts of Los Angeles or Salt Lake City and bring their family all the way out to the desert to work on the railroad. We also have a butterfly habitat which allows visitors to walk through an enclosed area with hundreds of butterflies. They learn about the plants that sustain the butterfly as well as how they pollinate. And it's really just a wonderful experience for kids and adults.
We also brought the infamous Mojave Max and some of his closest friends to a brand new home, a 15-acre desert tortoise paradise located along the Exploration Loop Trail. We completed construction of a beautiful picnic area in the historic Cottonwood Grove out on our trails where visitors can relax in the shade of those massive historic trees. We even partnered with the UNLV Design Department to create a new state-of-the-art playground where kids can climb, slide, play musical instruments, and water paint. But the fun won't stop there.
One of the more exciting construction projects we have going is the butterfly-themed splash pad and playground. It's right behind the butterfly habitat area, and it's built for children 3 to 6 years old, and it will include the splash pad, some play equipment, and some chairs with shade.
It will be a chance to merge education and play with lessons on these positive pollinators and the important role butterflies play in our natural environment. In fact, this playground project is supported by the Nevada State Legislature, who recognize the value the Springs Preserve has in providing unique educational experiences for our youngest guests. And in typical Springs Preserve fashion, we plan to take this opportunity and fit it into our everyday mission with a careful eye on sustainability. While the fun may be above ground for the kiddos, we're always conscious of our impact on the environment. So as with much of the water used in the valley, water from the splash pad will be captured, treated, and returned to Lake Mead. The Springs Preserve also continues to evolve with several improvement projects, starting with the replacement of the Origin Museum rotunda floor. And out in our natural area, we're underway with a renovation of our Cienega ponds.
The Meadows Detention Basin, which is a stormwater detention basin, is actually also a habitat for hundreds of birds and plants, and also a wonderful trail goes through this area. Unfortunately, right now, visitors on the trail can't see the channel, water channel, and the ponds because of just the overgrowth that's occurred over the last few years. So we're making some changes to that by lining some of the channels and the ponds with concrete so we can get in there, clear out the overgrown vegetation, make it just a more enjoyable experience for hikers and folks who use the trail.
We'll soon add to our 3.5 miles of trails with a new link from the Cottonwood Grove Ramada to a new attraction created by transforming a historic pump station that was vital for water delivery to Las Vegas 80 years ago.
We have some created ponds under some beautiful woodland trees. We're going to add to that with the trail that meanders across to the historic 1940s era Clark Street pump station. Right now it's boarded up. But we're planning to clean it out and make it an exhibit so the visitors can go inside, take a look at some of this historic pumping machinery, which is very interesting, actually.
Sometimes growth can be painful, but will lead to great strength. Such will be the case as we begin work later this year on a major improvement project in one of our most popular areas.
So we're here in the Botanical Garden. This is going to be the site of a future construction project. We are going to expand the electrical capacity of the garden. They're going to be digging up the garden. A lot of it involves hand digging. It's a slow-going process.
A process that will close the gardens and butterfly habitat for a year to allow for the most efficient use of construction time.
But by the end, it's going to really be an improvement to the visitor experience, especially outdoor events. So once the upgrades are made, I think it'll be well worth the inconvenience.
Just like nature, we'll never stop growing and evolving in an effort to maintain an ever-increasing interest in this native, all-natural cultural sanctuary. National Geographic's filmmakers and scientists travel across the globe to document their wild discoveries. But you don't have to go far to experience their adventures for yourself. Now at the Springs Preserve, National Geographic presents Earth Explorers. We put you right in the explorer's shoes, from polar regions to the exotic jungle and even the ocean floor. You'll take a journey to the wildest places in the world where you can climb in a genuine off-road vehicle, visit new environments with augmented reality, study animal behavior, and discover new species and more, just like the real National Geographic teams. This rare behind-the-scenes exhibit is at the Springs Preserve only for a limited time. Find it through May 5th at the Origin Museum. Admission is free for members or included in your general admission. Come start your adventure today. As the birthplace of Las Vegas, the Springs Preserve was once a thriving natural habitat teeming with water, plants, and animals. Then, as mankind moved into the valley, they built roads and added infrastructure, which changed the ecosystem. But scientists at the Springs Preserve have been working for over a decade to restore some of this habitat to its native landscape.
It's been a thrill, really, to watch the changes. It's obvious, especially from before photos, that we've really made a difference here. It's easy to see, in photos at the beginning when you've got a bare patch of soil, and then even within 1 or 2 years later, you've got a rich, diverse landscape, and then 10, 15 years later, we've got, cottonwood trees that are approaching 40 feet tall, and it's a thrill to see it all come together.
Back in the year 2000, before the Springs Preserve was officially opened, nearly 100 acres of the area was identified as prime land for habitat restoration. The procedure is straightforward: clean up sites disturbed by man, identify and restore soils to their original composition, and install native plants to recreate the former landscape. One shining example of habitat restoration success is the Springs Preserve Cienega, a type of wetland system unique to the American Southwest.
So our Cienega has been a really popular spot on site since we opened. And what we did was we took a water detention basin and we transformed it into a little desert wetland with a nice trail that goes through. It's really great, whether you're bird watching or just seeing other wildlife that kind of come and go in that area.
Lots of detail-oriented work goes into habitat restoration, especially when project leaders are committed to maintaining the integrity of the natural landscape. Even when there's a lot of data to keep up with, specific goals help keep habitat restorers on track.
In some cases, we're restoring for a particular wildlife species or trying to achieve a certain look for the public. We've created some educational landscapes where we wanted to show the public different plant communities that are found in Las Vegas Valley. So that would be our goal, to have a creosote bush community or a cottonwood community, and that would be our objective, and then we would create that.
All that diligent work is paying off in ways that aren't just visible to the eye, but vital to the creatures of our ecosystem. You see, one of the signs of a successful habitat restoration is that wildlife begins to move into the landscape and use it. And at the Springs Preserve, our guests get to witness this success story firsthand.
As they're out on these trails and getting to have these moments where they get to see different animals, it's a good way to kind of have that neat interaction with nature in a controlled setting.
Successful habitat restoration is a win for everyone. For the plants who will return, the animals who now have a place to live, and the Springs Preserve guests who get to enjoy the breathtaking results. So whether your interest is wildlife photography, adding to your birdwatching life list, or just enjoying a walk out on the trails, habitat restoration is an amazing way to visit the past. It's springtime and awesome events are blooming all throughout April and May at the Springs Preserve. First, on Saturday, April 27th, the Springs Preserve transforms into a wonderland, all for our annual Dia del Niño event. Celebrate the magic of childhood through kid-friendly activities including arts and crafts, live entertainment, and face painting. Tickets to this popular event are limited, so order yours today and make memories that will last long after they've grown up. Next is a Springs Preserve experience for guests 21 and older. Time to unwind at the Brews and Blues Festival. Grab your crew and sample a brew or two. We'll have drafts on tap from all around the world with live blues music to keep the night cool.
Local vendors will be there too with some good eats, so come hungry. It's all happening Saturday, May 11th from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Get your tickets early and get ready to chill. Speaking of things that chill, attention ice cream lovers of all ages. Get ready to let your sweet tooth run wild at the Springs Preserve's annual Ice Cream Festival. Indulge in your favorite creamy treats while enjoying live entertainment and carnival games. All this and more is happening May 18th at the Springs Preserve from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tickets to this event disappear faster than a gallon of Rocky Road at your little brother's birthday party, so get yours today at springspreserve.org.
If you had to describe the philosophy of the Springs Preserve in one word, that word would likely be sustainability. From water conservation and LEED Platinum architecture to solar power generation and restored natural habitats, our entire campus is a living example of sustainable living. But more importantly, our staff, many of whom have been with us from the very beginning, live that philosophy, not only while they're here at work, but in every aspect of their lives.
The Springs Preserve is an amazing place to work. I get such a sense of gratitude every time I drive onto the property every morning as the sun is rising, just to be in this beautiful, beautiful environment that is so central to the history of Las Vegas and what this city is all about.
The longer Dawn worked at the Springs Preserve, distinctions between her workplace and the rest of her community became more apparent. Wasteful practices and inefficiencies in the operation and design of homes, retail spaces, and other facilities left her feeling more grateful for her workplace and motivated her to carry the message of sustainability home with her each day.
The work that I do here at the Springs Preserve and the time that I get to spend here really makes me feel connected to the environment. This is such a beautiful place, and it is such an amazing gift that we actually have this place to offer to the community to come and experience what it's like to live in the Mojave Desert, and to give them the tools that they need to, on a day-to-day basis, live sustainably and in a way that is conscious of our natural resources.
She suggests that the best place to start is to disconnect with our ubiquitous electronics and immerse ourselves back into nature.
Our brains are so connected to the electronics in our environment that they get exhausted. And for me, being out in nature is a way to sort of reset and recalibrate my brain and to feel connected to my environment and to feel connected to myself. The Springs Preserve is such an amazingly serene, natural place that is so close to the center of town, and it is such a surprise for people that you can come out here and you can really feel connected to the desert environment.
Then, needed changes in one's lifestyle and environment become more apparent and easier to make when viewed through this renewed, more natural perspective.
We really try to provide people with the tools that they're going to need to start to change their mindset about sustainability. That it's really not something scary that's difficult to do. That all it is something that we need to begin to get used to doing and create new habits, and then it will become the new normal. We are all incredibly fortunate to live in this beautiful desert home. And if we want to continue to live here the way that we do right now, really enjoying this beautiful environment, then we all have to work together to maintain what we have.
Earth Day is celebrated around the world on April 22nd, and a spring season noted as an annual period of renewal and new growth. Coincidentally, the Springs Preserve Botanical Garden blossoms quite literally, showing off to the world just how gorgeous a sustainable native desert landscape can look.
The Botanical Gardens is just a beautiful place to see how plants can flourish in the desert. If you put the right kind of plants in, desert, adaptive, or native plants, you can really create an incredibly lush, beautiful environment that's really going to connect you to nature and the changing of the seasons.
In our harried urban lifestyles of today, time is something we feel we never have enough of. But once a reconnection is made with nature, priorities change and a recalibration takes place, compelling us to make a celebration of Earth Day a part of our everyday.
And that's really what sustainability is all about. So on a day-to-day basis, once you start to get into tune with nature, it just feels natural. You know, I mean, recycling feels natural. It might not at first, but once you get going, it becomes a habit and you can see the end goal. And I think that that's another thing that the Springs Preserve is really helpful with, is showing people what the result can be of really paying attention to the natural environment and making an effort to help it back to a more balanced state.
Our hugely popular butterfly habitat will be open for the spring season from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. through May 27th. So be sure to flutter by soon to get up close to these magical creatures. The schedule is subject to change based on weather conditions and special event availability. Admission to the butterfly habitat is $2 for value members, $3 for non-members. Bronze and above members receive free admission. All guests ages 2 and up must be ticketed. Follow all our flight plans by visiting our website at springspreserve.org or follow us on social media to be the first to know.
It made sense in the beginning. Landscape the Las Vegas Valley with towering trees that offer much needed shade and always appreciated greenery. But it ends up we were fighting biology and setting ourselves up for the pollen apocalypse.
Yeah, the ones that are planted in Las Vegas that cause a lot of problems are mulberry trees, olive trees, pine trees, and ash trees. In fact, ash trees are our most commonly planted tree here in Las Vegas, and we've put a lot of these in our area that cause a lot of our allergy problems, unfortunately.
Why are these particular trees pollen problem children? It boils down to reproduction. These trees want to reproduce, and to do this, the male plants must move their pollen to female plants. And since they can't get up and walk around, these trees have come up with other methods of pollen delivery.
They put a lot of pollen into the air because they're wind pollinated. So what they do is they'll put a lot of pollen into the air in hopes that one of those pollen grains will land on an appropriate female receptacle on another plant. So billions of pollen gets put into the air.
Did that surprise you? Many of us don't typically think of trees when considering allergy and pollen sources. In fact, it's often those plants with large flowers that are blamed, but they're not our allergy culprits.
Plants that have large, showy flowers are pollinated by birds and bees and insects and those sorts of things. So those plants produce very small amounts of pollen, and they're sticky little clumps of pollen that are supposed to get stuck on an insect and travel around that way. So they do not put pollen into the air. So if you see a plant that has a nice, big, showy flower on it, you are not going to be suffering from pollen allergies because of that plant.
Determining if a plant or tree is male or female is a great start to help deter allergy problems, and checking with your local nursery is the best way to ensure you're getting female plants instead of male ones. But there are also a few visual cues that can help you spot male and female plants.
If you have a plant that flowers and then it produces a fruit, that is your female. Then you also have those plants that have flowers with no fruit, and those are your male. So chances are, if you have plants that have flowers that attract bees or other pollinators, those are the ones that are not going to really cause you problems because the pollen is gathered on those specific insects or other animals.
When wind-blown pollen hits your nose instead of another plant, your body reacts to the foreign invader and you get allergies. Fortunately, allergy season in the desert is relatively short, between March and the end of May, with the occasional resurgence in the fall. These months are when growing plants are at their strongest and put a lot of pollen into the air, and they tend to be our windiest seasons too, making these allergy seasons pack a wallop. So what can you do when it's the time of the year for an allergen assault? First, make sure it's really pollen you're allergic to.
It could be dust, it could be dander, or it could be like dust mites. You can go to the local pollen tracker and it will tell you what's really high pollen in our area for that specific time. And then that way you can see what's really bothering you.
When pollen is on the wing, the dry desert air means the only thing that's going to get rid of it is a good rainstorm. So if pollen is your assailant, remember that there's no shame in taking cover.
Unfortunately, you have to generally keep your doors and windows closed, prevent air from getting in, and have a good filtration system in your home.
But for those allergy sufferers who don't want to retreat indoors, there is another option. Sure, no one can re-landscape the entire valley, but homeowners can make a major impact in their own yards. Plant flowering or fruiting trees over non-flowering ones. Make sure any native plants you own are not wind-pollinated. Finally, you can mow the flowering heads off pollen-producing grasses, and if you're serious about switching out sniffle-inducing turf for a less volatile landscape, you may be able to get some help.
And the other thing you could do is get your grass removed and replaced with a nice landscape that is full of showy flowers that will never produce pollen problems for you.
We do have a rebate program with SNWA to help get rid of some of the turf so you can plant things that wouldn't cause allergies.
Shoring up your yard against potent pollen doesn't mean giving up on beauty either. While not everything on display at the Springs Preserve Gardens are necessarily low allergen, there are enough ideas there, along with landscaping classes, that will prove inspirational should you choose to take your defense against pollen to the next level.
If you know going into this that certain plants are going to be great for not producing pollen, all the cactus, all the succulents, all of the great blooming shrubs and penstemons and springtime bloomers we have here, then you can see what's growing in Springs Preserve and you can implement that in your own yard.
Why do people like you love volunteering at the Springs Preserve? It's easy to see. As invaluable members of our team, our volunteers get to work with animals, educate visitors, work alongside real scientists, help beautify the grounds, get out of the office, work as a team, learn more about their desert home, promote sustainability, pick up a new gardening trick or two, connect with our city's history, cultivate community, and much, much more. And now you can be a part of our team. It's easy to join. Anyone aged 14 or older can fill out our online application form. Opportunities are available for individuals and groups for both short and long-term durations. Find the application and more info at springspreserve.org. We have a vest waiting for you.
Known lately as a superfood due to their high levels of nutrients and antioxidants, blueberries are a great addition to a healthy diet. And late spring means our grocery store shelves will soon fill with these seasonal delights. Today, Chef Cicely creates a perennial favorite dish with these super little berries.
Howdy folks, my name's Chef Cicely and I am making some blueberry cobbler here at the Divine Cafe at the Springs Preserve today. So I've got a lot of different bowls and a lot of different stuff out. It's easiest to just lay it all out and then it's going to come together into a few bigger bowls and then ultimately into one beautiful baked dessert. I've got melted butter and I've also got about a half a cup of sugar. Now for any of you who like to make cookies, this is going to look very familiar. This is what you call creaming the butter and the sugar until the butter gets a little bit lighter in color, a little bit lighter, and a little bit fluffier. All right, so I'm going to set this one aside and come back to it very shortly because what I also want to get going before I pull everything together is some lightly beaten eggs with, very simply, some vanilla. Ultimately, it's all going to go together, so I'm just going to give those eggs a really light beating, mostly just to get it homogeneous, which means it all looks the same. And that looks just about right. Now I've got a 1 3/4 of flour. I've got about a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to get a new whisk just because I don't want this to all jump together. Now from here, I'm going to reactivate my butter sugar mix. And then in go my eggs. These all get mixed together. This lovely little mixture of moisture is buttermilk, so it's got a little bit of sourness to it. And I could add that in now, and then I could add in my flour, or I could stage addition both of them. That's what I'm going to do. So stage addition means that I'm going to put in just a little bit and then mix it together. Get that nice and mixed. Oh, and then I'm going to switch gears, stage addition some buttermilk. Mix that together. You can see now it's starting to really come together. I've got a mess of fresh blueberries. This can be done with any sort of berries, particularly this time of year. Mix about just a 1/4 cup of sugar, and then here's a little trick. A tiny amount, maybe about a tablespoon of tapioca starch. As they break down, their moisture content is going to mix up with the starch, and it's going to congeal. And then it's going to make it like a nice pie filling. And then I have some fresh lemon juice here. So I want a little bit of moisture in all those blueberries. It's going to help the skins break down. And that looks perfect to me. So, next step, I'm going to get it ready to bake. Fill all those guys up. And then the rest of them, get them nice, spread. Even a thin layer you can build up with more blueberries if you'd like. These guys are pretty thick, so they're going to spread out. I want to just make sure I get enough to cover the bottom of the pan. And then, back to my mixture here. The way that I like to spread this out is actually to use an ice cream scoop. Get a nice little mound there. I can make my little cobbler biscuits as big or as small as I'd like. Perfect. Last but not least, I had a little bit of fresh nutmeg and a little bit of cinnamon, and I made cinnamon and nutmeg sugar. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of that over the top. And as these cook, that sugar is going to melt and it's going to make a nice caramelized top. This goes in the oven 350 for about 15 to 20 minutes, just until the top of these little biscuits are nicely golden brown. All right, fresh blueberry cobbler, individual little ramekins. Somebody can enjoy those by themselves, or beautiful cobbler biscuits. Can't go wrong with this one. I hope you come down to the Springs Preserve and dine with us at the Divine Cafe to have something just as delicious as this sometime soon. Thanks for joining me.
There's a lot more to discover, so join us next time here at the Springs Preserve, where exciting new attractions, newly restored natural habitats, allergy-free landscapes, and an everlasting celebration of Earth Day mingle to bring new life to Las Vegas.
Thanks for watching Clark County Television.
This park in Summerlin is home to walking trails, a playground, and weekly farmers market. Recently, it also became a home for an important environmental message. Welcome to the Flood Channel. I'm your host, Beatriz Martinez. Trump Park is one of the 6 locations the city of Las Vegas chose for an artist to paint the storm drains. But as you'll see, it's more than just sprucing up the area. Anytime it rains, anywhere in Clark County, water finds its way into a storm drain. But sometimes, trash stands in its way, and residents are left scratching their heads as they drive through puddles.
They clearly don't understand that the gutter eventually, maybe not right now because it doesn't rain too much in Las Vegas, but when it rains, that rain is just going to carry all the chemicals, all the debris, all the pesticides, pet waste, everything gets carried. Water, everything water comes into contact with, it carries with it and eventually gets to Lake Mead.
The Water Pollution Control Facility treats water from the sewers, but rainwater is in a separate system.
It's definitely pretty important because a lot of the public don't quite understand. One is the difference between where does the wastewater go and where does the stormwater go. So when we go to public outreach events, we really try to distinguish wastewater goes to the wastewater treatment plant and it gets treated, where everything that goes stormwater, the gutter is also included as your stormwater, and all that goes to the wash untreated all the way back to Lake Mead. So we know that what we're doing is we're cleaning the water here, but the stormwater doesn't really get treated or cleaned at all before it gets to Lake Mead.
The City of Las Vegas has increased efforts to inform residents about untreated stormwater.
We do public outreach events, and our goal is to reach out to the community, to educate them, to help them understand that they can play just a little part in helping us protect our drinking water source by protecting the Las Vegas Wash and Lake Mead, by picking up pet waste, or collecting all the oil when they change their oil in their driveway, those sorts of things, picking up garbage, litter.
As part of this awareness campaign, the city decided to take the message directly to the streets. This year, the city sponsored a public art program to help make the storm drains stand out.
This was my proposal. So this is Kip the Fish, but in this case, because we had to have Kip the Fish in there. But in this case, he's skeletons because of the pollution, the water pollution that we need to curb. And this is the cute cat that I had, and I wanted to make it cute and colorful to attract attention.
Shala is one of 4 artists chosen by the city to paint storm drains in locations in each of the city's 6 wards. She previously painted utility boxes and thinks caricatures draw people in.
To create something really colorful and something that brings a type of entertainment to people, to passerbys.
Shan Michael Evans is primarily a digital artist, but he was thrilled to take on the city project and paint storm drains.
I would say I'm pretty much environmentally conscious, but at the same time there's very little I know about it or how to help. I was quite surprised to see how filthy the drains are as I'm working right there, and just peer over to the right of me. You can look down the drains and the amount of trash. That was a bit shocking. So it makes sense to put some sort of notification there to let other people know as well.
The city wanted artists to incorporate the old storm drain marker mascot, Kip the Fish. Artists also needed to mention that it drains to Lake Mead.
Especially as an artist, it's quite an undertaking to deliver that message. And personally, there's nothing more that you want on all levels than for someone to take that to heart. And sometimes I find there's no better way than through art, colors, and even words. Something that just draws attention to it. Something that people need to be drawn to.
We strategically placed and decided the locations based on all the different wards, the city wards that we have, and strategically placed them where there's a lot of foot traffic, near parks, near schools, near libraries, just so that we can reach out near the walking trails as well, so we can reach out to more people. Even though there isn't a public outreach event happening right now, people are reading this as they walk by.
Shala studied the locations she was awarded to determine the best fit for the space. Her art can be found near Centennial Library in the Northwest and at Trent Park in Summerlin. When she started, she did not know stormwater drained to Lake Mead.
I did not. And I actually had that question in my mind because when I would paint murals, and you have, paint brushes that needs to be cleaned, where do I dump what's the best place to get rid of the water, the dirty water? And I thought, well, maybe the sink, but then, I didn't know. And then, so this was very informative to me as well.
Nima Apkanar has worked as a visual artist in Las Vegas for the past 5 years. He is originally from Iran and loves to work with water.
I'm a visual and conceptual artist. I work with materials like water, and I'm very much interested in phenomena. And in that way, my work is dealing with philosophical structure and the social structure of art in general.
Apkinar took design from his homeland and incorporated the fish into the overall theme.
The design, the pattern that you see on the drains, those are the arabesque, part of the culture, again, the Iranian culture, and they're mainly used in water fountains as a part of the monuments and to glorify the actual monument. And the fish, the design of the fish, the tiny fishes on it, it's more straightforward, and there is a like a straightforward connection to the actual wildlife of creatures in the water.
Each of the artists felt a great connection to Las Vegas by doing this project.
Well, I took quite a liking to Kip immediately, and wanted so that's where the fish came from. And then, you know, thinking about those poor fish, and then what might be coming their way every time you throw something in the street.
Giuliano said several city departments got involved in the project, which had support from the city manager and the council all the way down to public works crews. Giuliano said this project embodies the city's motto, building community to make life better.
To be able to reach out the community, and, you know, if you happen to be walking by and you see someone who's really not understanding that what they're doing is impacting the storm drain, whether they're sweeping leaves into the storm drain, you kind of explain to them, I understand they're just leaves or they're just debris from your yard, but you know what? They are being carried to the wash, and they're actually clogging the storm drain, and then when a flood comes, that's going to overflow. So their little small impact, you know, what do you do with it? You sweep it up and put it in the garbage rather than down the storm drain.
The city is hoping to do a similar project in 2019, this time getting school children to design art on the storm drain and hiring artists to make it happen. All of the artists said they'd love to work on the project again.
I love it. I do get to meet interesting people in the community. It does create an impact, a new conversation about our community, our environment. And it's very important, protecting our wildlife, Lake Mead. These are dear to my heart, and I know it's important to people who live here in Las Vegas. My inspiration, I try to paint from love, like through the heart, and it comes out beautifully. That's what I do, and that's what inspires me to create something, to create more beauty in the world.
Lake Mead is full of life, a seemingly endless aquatic parade, attracting and sustaining busy desert creatures. It's one of the most diverse ecosystems in Nevada, with species found nowhere else on Earth. But every time soap suds run down your driveway, oil drips in the streets, fertilizer washes off your lawn, or random trash gets swept in our storm sewers, their home gets a little uglier. They get a little sicker. If we don't take simple steps to change our ways, soon you'll wonder where all our friends have gone. It's time to clean up our act, Southern Nevada. To get your home or business lake-friendly certified, visit belakefriendly.com.
Some residents still don't know that anything you put down the storm drain can end up in Lake Mead. We have over 620 miles of channel in our flood control system that take water all the way down to the lake. Sometimes those channels are lined with concrete, other times we leave them natural. Residents often ask the district why some flood channels are made of concrete and some are natural. Throughout Clark County, there are examples of both, but as you'll see in this computer animation, the two are not equal. On the right, you'll see water rapidly filling up the simulated concrete channel. On the left, you'll notice that a natural channel does not fill up uniformly or as quickly. Rocks and shrubbery act to block the movement of water. They can also cause more noticeable waves. Concrete channels can move water up to 30 miles an hour. They're certainly dangerous places to be near during a flash flood, but they also process water more efficiently. In many cases, concrete channels make the most sense. But in areas with environmental sensitivity or areas near natural washes, we tried to leave the channels as natural looking as possible. We've also done a model to show you just how detention basins fill up with water during a flood event. In this animation, you can see the channel leading into the basin and the water beginning to fill. In some of our smaller basins, water can rise rapidly. Once again, this is no place to be during a flash flood. This model shows exactly why. Not only does the water rise rapidly, there's also a current and sometimes a wave visible through these basins. And just think of how much water that could be. Some of our basins are miles long. When it comes to the flood control system, there's no question too small. This year, we unveiled a new video for our school outreach program to provide answers to those young inquiring minds.
How many of you guys have ever heard it rain while you were in your classroom?
Each year, the district reaches more than 10,000 elementary school students with flash flood safety information. We recently worked with students at UNLV to update the video we show in schools. Feel like going back to school for a few minutes? Here's a look at our new presentation.
Yes, it is a desert out there. Sure, it hardly rains, but a few raindrops like me landing in our desert can quickly turn into a raging flood. Cars can float away, people can get hurt, plus homes and buildings can be destroyed. Our sky is usually sunny and clear. Rainstorms don't happen often in our dry climate. When rain does fall, though, it only takes less than 1 inch of rain to cause a flash flood. Here's why. We have a lot of hard crust in our soil called caliche. Some call it desert concrete. It forms just under the ground and it can't absorb water, so the water runs right off the ground into the streets or through washes, natural channels formed by running water. When rain falls on the west side of the Las Vegas Valley near Red Rock, it runs to the east side near Boulder Highway. It's a big downhill slope. To look at it another way, the Las Vegas Valley is like a giant bowl tipped on its side. The rainwater doesn't soak into the ground. Instead, it just slides right down the bowl from one side to the other. It's important to know how to stay safe when a flood occurs in the desert. To help you remember the dangers of floodwater, let's learn the 3 Ds of flash flood safety so you know how to stay safe from floods. The first D of flash flood safety you need to know is floodwater and flash floods are dangerous. Floodwater is fast and powerful. It can move extremely quickly and it can knock you off your feet. Floodwater will flow through the streets down into drainage pipes called storm drains and into flood channels. These are pathways that direct water away from your school, your neighborhood, and your home. The water travels inside these channels until they reach a detention basin. Think of these as really big bathtubs. These basins can be as big as 170 football fields in length and 55 feet deep. The detention basins take in huge amounts of flood water and release the water back into channels and underground storm drains at a much slower pace so it can travel safely through the valley into Lake Mead. Channels and detention basins are no place to play. They are dangerous. The water moves so fast it can sweep you under or you could drown. Don't ever go into flood channels and don't get in detention basins either. Remember, it's dangerous. Keep your friends, your family, and even your pets away from these areas at all times. Even without water in them, they are still very dangerous because water can rush in even if it's not raining where you are. The second D of flash flood safety is dirty. Floodwater is absolutely filthy. Floodwaters are filled with junk like oil, chemicals, and pet waste. It washes off yards down streets and into storm drains and detention basins. It's a dirty and dangerous place, one where you should never swim and play. The deep channels hide trash like nails, broken glass, and construction debris. It's so dirty that you can't see what may be under the water. Not only can this filthy water hurt you, but it can also harm our environment. Water from washing your car at home, sprinklers, and rainstorms flows to Lake Mead, where we get most of our drinking water. Pollutants like trash and chemicals in the water can hurt plants and wildlife like fish and birds. Everyone, including you, can help protect the land we live on, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. If you see someone littering or dumping trash in the desert or into storm drains, tell your parents. They can call the Regional Flood Control District at 702-685-0000. Remember, floodwater is dirty. But it is our job to pollute less. We all need to protect the environment, not only for today, but for future generations. The last D of flash flood safety you need to remember is don't drive. So, you know playing in floodwater is dangerous, but what about driving in it? You are not safe there either. You never want to drive through any amount of water. Just an inch of water can cause you to lose control of the car. All it takes is 2 feet of water for the car to float away, and you with it. The smart thing to do is always stay away from flooded areas. Floods are very powerful and can destroy anything in its path. Half of all deaths caused by flash floods are because people try to drive through flooded streets. This puts the drivers, the passengers, and the rescuers at risk. So remember to tell your parents, don't drive through floodwaters. It's just not safe and it's just not smart. Your parents can also get a ticket for driving through a flooded street. You need to make sure your parents don't put themselves, you, or the firemen trying to rescue you in danger. If a street is flooded, turn around, don't drown. When it rains, be alert. There are many signs that'll tell you rain may be coming. Lightning and thunderstorms in the valley can be beautiful, but make sure you're inside to enjoy them. Listen to radio or TV. You can learn if there's a flash flood watch or a flash flood warning. A flash flood watch means it's raining heavily and a flood could happen soon. Tell an adult if you know there's a flash flood watch and stay out of the rain. A flash flood warning means a flash flood is happening right now. Tell an adult and get to high ground right away. Storms in southern Nevada happen fast. The water will go away fast. Just stay inside and wait until the water is off the streets. You can also check out the Regional Flood Control website. There you'll find out how much rain is falling around the valley. If a lot of rain is falling, stay inside and away from the water. Flash flood season starts July through September, but floods in southern Nevada can happen anytime and anywhere. So remember, be prepared, be alert, and make smart decisions so that you can stay dry and stay alive.
Oh my God, this car's gonna hit us. Oh my God! Oh, we're floating! We're floating! We're floating! Oh my God!
Mind the road. Flash flood season is here.
We have all seen the devastation that floods can cause to homes and lives in Clark County. Has your neighborhood or home ever been affected by major storms? Federal flood insurance is a smart and cost-effective investment if you think your home is vulnerable. Some easy-to-understand assessments can help determine if you need flood insurance. Call your insurance agent or call 1-888-CALL-FLOOD or visit the Regional Flood Control District's website for guidance. See if flood insurance makes sense for you.
Yep. Look, it's floating.
Public outreach is an important part of the Flood Control District's mission. But when it comes to keeping floods away from people, our construction program has to reach all parts of the county. Let's take a look at this new project in Searchlight. Some of the district's projects are massive, like the $23.5 million Pittman North Detention Basin. Others are a lot smaller in scope, but are still priceless for residents in the outlying areas. Work is finishing up on a $2 million storm drain project under Encinita Street in Searchlight, Nevada. This project started a year ago and including installing 2,800 linear feet of reinforced concrete pipe. It was a big deal for this town an hour's drive south of Las Vegas. Randall Hastings lives on Encinitas in a home whose occupants have watched the flooding since the 1960s.
Since the street kind of slopes up right here, a lot of the water comes down right through this area here, and during the monsoon season it gets pretty heavy in the rainfall.
The county managed this project, and the Regional Flood Control District provided more than $2 million in funding for the new storm drain. Crews held frequent meetings during construction to make sure everyone was on task.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes they can get a little scary. The water, like I said, during the monsoon season, it really rains hard here, and it comes quick, and it floods real fast. And then being on this embank right here, it kind of just comes down real quick.
The project connected Encinita Street to existing facilities at the south end of the city. Now, water will move underground and take away the big problem for residents.
It's kind of dangerous for the kids. Usually when it rains like that, we'll keep them inside. We don't let them go running around the park or nothing because, it's not waist high or anything, but it's still dangerous. Even if the water just knocks them down or, it don't really have to be that deep to do that. So I think having that drain will help deal with the water situation.
The Searchlight project was built by Wadley Construction. The road is now paved and the pipes are underground, ready to carry water away from Hastings' home in a safe way. Here in the park, it's easy to remember why we have to keep our environment clean. So make sure you do your part and put litter where it belongs. For more information about the Flood Control District, go to BeFloodSafe.com or follow us on Twitter and Facebook.
Driving a car in a diamond lane requires 2 or more people.
Oh, I'm sorry, but diamonds really are a girl's best friend. Now where's a girl gonna find another person to share a ride with?
Club Ride can help you find people to carpool with. Visit their site at rtcsnv.com.
It looks like someone visited the Club Ride website.
That's right. These diamonds really are a driver's best friend.
Clark County is a county located in the very southern tip of Nevada. It's about 8,000 square miles, population of about 2.2 million. The 400 square miles we cover here in the Las Vegas Valley, including the Las Vegas Strip, which is in Clark County, is our busiest part of that response area.
At any given time, we have upwards of 300,000 visitors from all across the world here in Las Vegas on the beautiful Las Vegas Strip.
The influx of visitors on a weekly, monthly basis is really a game changer for us in law enforcement. The way the city changes each weekend, each special event, that presents a whole new set of challenges.
Clark County, we try to hold ourselves up as an example. And instead of just doing business as usual, we as a team are really looking for, some achievable solutions to some of these age-old questions.
As we were coming out of the recession, still stuck in some of our recession funding years, our call volume was very, very high. We had many of our vehicles at more than 5,000 calls a year, and that's just an unacceptable number.
We were sending these big, expensive rigs with 4 personnel to calls that were, in a lot of cases, not really warranting that robust a response.
So with staff, our medical director, and our district attorney, we got together, we pulled several years of stats on medical calls, and we looked at what calls percentage-wise turned out to be actually critical calls. So we started to massage a new plan that came out to be called the X model, and we massaged it to where we were able to send the right resource to the right calls, and on those non-emergent calls, we stopped sending fire department assets to those calls, and we let the private ambulances handle that. We also looked at handling of intoxicated individuals on the Las Vegas Strip. That's a big number for us. So all those things combined, we knocked about 30,000 calls off of our units in a 1-year period.
If you get down to the root cause of some of these challenges, they're very solvable if you just do a little homework.
Las Vegas presents a lot of challenges, a lot of unique opportunities. We have to be in front of possible threats, and Las Vegas has the potential for all different types of threats that we have to be aware of. So partnerships is important to us. Being proactive is important to us, really in helping protect and serve the citizens of this community.
The relationship of the Clark County Fire Department with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the other Valley Fire Departments, the other Valley Police Departments, and the FBI is amazing. We have trained together, we have built response programs and plans that are now used nationwide. Last year we suffered an unthinkable tragedy on October 1st of 2017 when we had the 58 people gunned down on the Las Vegas Strip attending an outdoor concert. Everything that we did for the years, like 6-7 years prior to that night, training, ICS command and control training, getting our guys and gals from both police and fire to match up and go to work together. On that night, we had 19 integrated police and fire rescue task forces in operation that night.
October 1st is a great example of collaboration. Our partnership with the city, with Chief Castle, was evident right away. We have to all be in sync, obviously, so communication in that was huge. We all partnered at the incident command structure for really kind of joint operations to figure out what the long-term response is, what the short-term response is.
It's one thing to say that you have great relationships. Certainly one thing to say it when you have it at the top. But the reality of it is that you have to truly exercise that down to the level of the men and women that are doing the work on the police and the fire side. It takes bold leadership on both sides, the police and the fire department, to get us to where it is that we found ourselves on 1 October.
We are big proponents of task forces. The FBI puts together lots of task forces where different agencies come together to work particular threats. We have terrorism task forces, violent crime task forces. This is where we all sit together, work together on a side-by-side basis to really target whatever that particular threat is.
This is about getting better. And when you have really honest conversation between police and firefighters at the line level about things that could have gone better, it prepared us to do exactly what it is that we did on 1 October.
What we're really excited about is we have such a great young core of men and women in this organization, and they're going to carry this torch going forward of the pride, professionalism, and dedication that this department provides day in and day out to our residents, to our visitors, to our police officers and our law enforcement counterparts at the federal level. We've got a great group, a great plan going forward to keep at the level that we're at.
You never know when you can't really see whoops, coming. And sometimes you just can't avoid the old. Life is full of surprises. So when life pulls up, get to UMC Quick Care. For life's bumps and breaks, sneezes and wheezes, one of our Valley locations is ready and waiting to save the day. So you can get in, get out, get better, quick. UMC Quick Care.
Thanks for watching Clark County Television.
Water conservation is a priority in Southern Nevada. Reduce your water footprint in 3 simple steps. Spring forward with seasonal watering restrictions, but don't water more than you need to. And find and fix the most common household leaks to avoid water waste. See all the ways to save here on Waterways. Mandatory watering restrictions can help us all water wisely, avoid overwatering, and reduce water waste. In spring, you may be inclined to water more as the temperatures warm, but you don't need to. Your landscape can survive on less. The key is to monitor your landscape regularly and fine-tune seasonal needs.
On average, Valley residents use about 60% of their water outside. That means outdoors is also where residents have the greatest potential to conserve water. One of the most effective ways to save water is to follow mandatory watering restrictions. In March and April, both sprinkler and drip watering are limited to 3 assigned days a week according to your watering group. Properties in groups A, C, and E can water on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Properties in groups B, D, and F can water on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Watering on Sunday is not permitted for any group. If you don't know your assigned watering days or group, Simply look on your water bill, call your water provider, or visit snwa.com for help.
Turf watered by sprinklers and plants and trees watered by drip emitters have different needs. So let's first talk about sprinklers.
Check your irrigation clock first to ensure sprinklers are running only on your assigned spring days. Next, set your irrigation controller's start times to run sprinkler cycles in early morning. Water applied in the morning packs more of a punch since it won't evaporate under peak daytime temperatures or get swept away by afternoon winds. Another key to efficient lawn watering is spacing sprinkler cycles over a few hours to ensure your grass doesn't get more than it can possibly drink.
Jared, tell us why it's better to water your lawn with short sprinkler cycles.
It's great to run your sprinklers in short cycles, roughly for about 4-minute increments, and we actually call it the cycle and silk method. The reason why is that it lets the water run deep into the root zones, and it also avoids runoff. If the water runs from the grass into the street, you might be charged a water waste fee, and that would show up on your bill.
Many warm season grasses, such as Bermuda, can stay healthy with even less water. Think about testing this on your lawn. If you remove 1 minute from each of your 4-minute sprinkler cycles, you can reduce sprinkler watering by 25%. Water dry spots with a handheld hose and test sprinklers for a minute or two after every spring mowing. Look for misaligned sprinkler heads and replace broken parts promptly to avoid water waste.
Let's switch gears and talk about drip irrigation. Drip watering is needed less frequently, however you'll set it to run longer, typically 30 minutes or more each time.
That's because drip irrigation delivers water more slowly and deeply to a plant's root zone in gallons per hour rather than gallons per minute. Delivered properly, drip irrigation promotes deep roots that provide better anchoring and stability, protection from hot surface temperatures, and a greater amount of nutrients. Drip irrigation is permitted 3 days a week in spring, but established plants often do well with less.
Just because you're scheduled to water 3 times a week doesn't necessarily mean that you need to water your plants that many times. What you generally want to do is to monitor your plants and make sure that you transition them well. So for example, in the early spring you can water them once, and then eventually twice, and then eventually 3 times a week. That way you make sure that your plants are going to be growing correctly, and that when it warms up they have the correct amount of water.
Like sprinklers, you should routinely check your drip system to keep your landscape's lifeline in good working condition. Walk through your landscape monthly and look for broken lines or clogged emitter heads. Flush your drip line through the end cap in both spring and fall. If you've got some spring landscaping projects planned, the key is to think smart from the start. New desert-adapted plants will need extra watering as they get established, which is allowed for the first 30 days under watering restrictions. After that, it's time to cut back. For more spring watering tips, visit snwa.com.
If you're caught watering outside your assigned watering days, you could receive a water waste fine. SNWA member agencies conduct water waste investigations throughout the valley and cite water wasters. A property owner is given an opportunity to correct the problem, but if it continues, the property will be fined for wasting water. If you see water waste, report it immediately to your water provider. A smart irrigation controller can help to reduce water waste by helping you manage your outdoor water use. If you have an older irrigation controller, consider an upgrade. The SNWA offers a rebate for qualifying smart controllers, which use weather data to assess and apply water only as your landscape needs it. New smart controllers allow you to control your watering needs from the palm of your hand through mobile apps.
So you can do all of that activity right here from your phone. With a simple app, I can stand anywhere on my property or really anywhere in the world and tell my irrigation system to change its program, and all those changes would be reflected right here. So I can just choose a particular area, I can edit the program, I can choose the days of the week, what times to start. I can even put in pictures of the areas of my landscape so that I remember which zone connects with which portion of the landscaping. So this is all happening now for about $100. And with our Smart Controller rebate program, you'd get 50 of that back.
Visit snwa.com to learn more about Water Smart Controllers and to print the coupon. Mandatory watering restrictions can help us all water wisely, avoid overwatering, and reduce water waste. In spring, you may be inclined to water more as the temperatures warm, but you don't need to. Your landscape can survive on less. The key is to monitor your landscape regularly and fine-tune seasonal needs.
Las Vegas is the driest city in the nation.
We average a dismal 4 inches of rain a year and rely on the Colorado River for 90% of our water supply. The river system, however, is facing the worst drought in the basin's recorded history. As a result, Lake Mead's water level has dropped more than 130 feet since 2000. With a possible federally declared water shortage in 2020, water conservation is critical for the community. A majority of Southern Nevada's water is used outdoors, primarily on landscapes, and cannot be recycled and returned to Lake Mead. Reducing outdoor water use is an important conservation goal that will help protect Southern Nevada from shortage.
There are 3 steps you can take to cut your outdoor water use and make a positive impact on conservation efforts. Follow mandatory watering restrictions, report water waste, and remove useless grass. Doug, let's start with mandatory watering restrictions. Why is it so important to water only on your assigned watering days?
Well, first of all, it's important that people know that we created those restrictions around the needs of even a high water use landscape. So you can certainly keep your landscape healthy and still comply with the restrictions. What's cool about the restrictions is it seems like a fairly small and simple thing for people to do, change their clock 4 times a year. But if everybody gets on board, everyone in the valley complies with those restrictions, we're talking about saving billions of gallons of water every year.
Don't know which day you're supposed to water? We can help. Visit snwa.com and type your address where it says Find Your Watering Days and Group right on the homepage. You could incur a water waste fee if you're not following the mandatory watering restrictions.
Define water waste and what issues could result in a water waste fine.
Well, the most conspicuous type of water waste is allowing water to flow or spray off your property. So when you see water just flowing down the street, that's obviously not doing anyone any good. It's not helping a plant, simply throwing away a valuable resource. But the other ways that you can violate the water waste policy are by watering on a day that wasn't assigned to you. So remember, never on Sundays, and look up your watering schedule and know it. And also during the midsummer, we even have time of day restrictions. We don't want to run sprinkler systems in the heat of the day when that water is simply just evaporating before it can even reach the ground.
Water waste fees for SNWA member agencies start at $40 to $80 for most residential customers and double each month if the water waste continues. Properties with larger meters pay significantly more for wasting water. These charges appear on your water bill. If you're wasting water, fix it before you incur a water waste fee, and report water waste to your water provider when you see it. The biggest water guzzler is grass. If the only time you step on your grass is to mow it, take it out and receive a cash rebate when you replace it with WaterSmart landscaping. An average 1,000 square foot residential landscape conversion can save more than 50,000 gallons of water per year.
But when we do remote sensing, use aerial images to look around the valley, we suspect that there's still as much ornamental or non-functional turf in the valley as has been converted to WaterSmart landscaping. So we're about halfway through what we consider to be an important project. We've been doing this now 18 years. And so we're working with some of the customers that are most resistant to these types of changes, and it's important that they reevaluate what they're doing, reevaluate what their needs, how their needs might have changed. In some cases, people's lifestyle has changed and they might be ready now to undertake these projects. And we're also offering the largest incentive we've ever offered. So we're trying to reach that remaining non-functional turf in the valley, things where people only get on it when they're pushing a lawnmower. We can't afford water for that.
Businesses and residents can apply for the SNWA's WaterSmart Landscapes rebate online or by calling the Conservation Helpline. Once you've completed the application, the SNWA will review your lawn and conversion areas and answer any questions you may have. You must participate in a pre-conversion site visit before removing any grass.
If you don't have grass but you live in a community where there is useless grass, like this, ask your homeowners association to remove it and replace it with desert landscaping.
Many of us live in an HOA and we know it can be a little bit complicated. So you have all these common areas. You got to work through a board. The board is trying to meet the needs of the residents and so forth. So it's not as simple as convincing a single family household to change their landscaping. What we're doing is a lot of outreach. We're doing mailings. We're trying to get ourselves in front of those boards so we can explain to them what the options are, how we might be able to help, what the financial assistance that we can provide to their project is. And likewise in the business community is also hard to reach because in some cases a facility may not be controlled by the people inside that building. And so we have to go find parent companies and so forth. Same thing, we're trying to reach out to them, get an audience with them, and have a discussion with them.
The Water Authority has teamed up with the Las Vegas Lights Football Club to encourage the community, including residents, businesses, and HOAs, to remove grass that serves no purpose.
This isn't a field, this is useless. Now we can really play.
The SNWA will pay you to remove useless grass. Our Water Smart Landscapes rebate program offers $3 for every square foot of grass you replace with desert landscaping, up to 10,000 square feet. Beyond that, customers can earn $1.50 per square foot. Since the rebate program launched in 1999, the community has removed more than 188 million square feet of turf and conserved more than 119 billion gallons of water. Leaks, whether big or small, waste water. If your water bill has increased recently for no apparent reason, you may have a leak in your home or landscape. Put on your detective cap and track down the most common water wasters with these tips.
Many U.S. homes can waste on average more than 10,000 gallons of water to leaks each year. That's enough to fill a small swimming pool. Nationwide, household leaks can waste more than 1 trillion gallons of water annually, and that's enough to fill 40 million swimming pools and 24 billion baths. Closer to home, fixing your own leaks can make a big difference on your water bill while conserving our most precious resource. Common sources of indoor home leaks include worn toilet flappers and dripping faucets or shower heads. Most can be relatively easy and, yes, inexpensive to fix. To help get you started, the SNWA offers a free indoor water audit and retrofit kit. With the kit, you can test the water efficiency of your home and upgrade some of your fixtures.
So the indoor audit and retrofit kit serves two purposes. It has several items that you can change in your house that actually are more efficient to help you save water. And then it also provides a couple of tools to find leaks inside the house. So together, it kind of gives you opportunities to save around the house. So some examples of things that are included are a shower head that is a low flow shower head. So it's a higher efficiency shower head, performs like your normal shower head, but uses less water. Then we also have things like a flow bag, which actually you can go around the house and test the flow of the different devices, like your aerators, your shower aerators. We give a couple sample aerators. There's dye tablets to see if you have leaks in your toilet. So there's a lot of items in this little kit that gives you the opportunity to save water around your house. We provide these kits, one free to every property in the valley. You just have to call 258-SAVE or visit snwa.com and request the audit kit and we'll mail it to you.
Believe it or not, the toilets in your home consume more water than your faucets and showers, especially older models. If you have a leaky toilet, or maybe you're hearing the dreaded phantom flush, that's even more water down the drain. To test your toilet for a leak, first, just listen. If it's running nonstop, you have a leak. If you're still not sure whether you have a leak, use the leak detection dye tablets from the SNWA's Indoor Water Audit and Retrofit Kit. The water's color will change to blue if you have a leak. Most likely, the culprit is a worn toilet flapper. Most flappers degrade after a few years and no longer seal tightly at that point, so leaks occur. Luckily, flappers are inexpensive and easy to replace. Better yet, leaky toilet flappers could soon become a thing of the past. That's because flapperless toilets are replacing conventional flush systems. These toilets are ultra efficient and can minimize leaks, ultimately helping to conserve water. Now what about a leaky faucet? A faucet that loses just one drip per second can waste more than 3,000 gallons per year. That's enough water to take more than 180 showers. Fix leaky faucets by checking faucet washers and gaskets for wear and replacing them if necessary. Don't overlook your shower head. A shower head that leaks 10 drips per minute wastes more than 500 gallons per year. You could wash 60 loads of dishes in your dishwasher with that amount of water. You can help create a tighter connection between the shower head and the pipe stem with pipe thread seal tape, also known as Teflon tape. If that doesn't stop the leak and the repair looks more complicated, you may want to call a licensed plumber. If you find that repairs aren't enough to stop the leaks you've found, it might be time to replace your fixtures. Look for the WaterSense label when you shop for new products to increase your home's efficiency. WaterSense labeled items are widely available at retailers, have been tested to perform at 20% higher water efficiency than average products, and provide measurable savings. And yes, they'll still get you, your clothes, and your dishes clean. So what if I suspect I have a leak, but I haven't been able to find it yet?
The first thing you want to do is make sure that everything that uses water in the house is turned off. So you want to have your irrigation off. You want to have dishwashers, washing machines, everything that uses water, not using water, so shut it off. Then you want to come out and you want to come to the meter. And so if you look at the meter down here, there's two dials. The big dial is thousands of gallons, and so you're not going to see that turning unless you just have a massive leak, but usually that's not what you see. It's the little dial, which is a triangle or a little star. If everything is turned off inside and you see that little dial still turning a little bit, that means you have a leak somewhere. And then you have to go through a process of elimination to decide, is it inside or outside? Could be both, but hopefully it's not. It's one or the other. And so we'll walk around and we'll turn the irrigation system on the outside off, and then you can kind of go inside and see if there's anything inside that may be the cause of that.
Outdoors, your irrigation system is susceptible to leaks that can waste far larger volumes of water than, say, a leaky indoor faucet. That's why regular checks are vital. Systems are subject to frequent use and high temperatures in summer, along with an occasional freeze in winter. Both extremes, along with wear and tear, can lead to cracks and breaks in both pipes and drip lines, as well as broken sprinklers and emitters. To determine whether you have a leak in your landscape, turn your irrigation clock to the manual setting and run each line or station on your system for 1 to 2 minutes. Walk through your landscape. A visual inspection should turn up obvious breaks. Check your valve box as well to ensure the valves aren't leaking. If you can't find the source of the leak but find soggy grass, damp planted areas, or puddles of water, you may have a larger problem, an underground leak.
So through the process of elimination, by turning the backflow off and the irrigation, we think we've eliminated the outside. We've gone around inside and we haven't found anything. So really the next step is possibly a mainline leak or something that's underground. And for that, you really want to hire a professional. They can come out, they can kind of determine, they usually can find it, they have tools to do that. And so, somebody you want to hire to bring a professional to take care of it.
Repairing water damage caused by leaks can cost thousands of dollars for homeowners. Thanks to new, smart leak detection devices, you can prevent or mitigate water damage at your home using a smartphone app.
So leak detection devices is kind of the new technology that we're really excited about. It will help address water loss or water damage caused by leaks, which can kind of be a big issue for homeowners. And so these new devices basically will strap on to your water lines in your house, and then they will communicate to the customer through their phone. There are two types of devices, basically. One will strap on to your water line. Sometimes they go onto your meter or just onto a pipe. So you can monitor your water use. If you have a leak, you get notified. But in order to turn your water off, if you have to, you would have to come to the meter and do a turn off yourself. The other type of device, actually, you cut pipe and you install it. It also gives you information about consumption and how much you're using, but then if you have a catastrophic leak or for some need you need to turn it off, through your phone you can actually turn it off. They cost a little bit more money, they're a little more involved to install, but it actually gives you a little more protection. So there's kind of two basic types of devices that are out there, and we'll rebate both of those through our programs.
The SNWA offers a rebate of 50% of the purchase price, or $200, whichever is less. To receive the rebate, you must agree to allow SNWA to periodically conduct research through phone calls, surveys, or monitoring of water use to determine the long-term benefits of various water-smart technologies. For program details, visit snwa.com. When you turn on the tap, you expect the water to flow, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen. Water embarks on an incredible journey before it reaches your faucet with help from municipal water agencies.
Nearly 90% of southern Nevada's drinking water begins as snow or rain in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. After the snow melts and drains into the river, the water travels hundreds of miles before reaching Lake Mead. The Southern Nevada Water Authority draws and pumps this water to its state-of-the-art water treatment facilities. Following treatment that ensures water meets all state and federal Safe Drinking Water Act standards, water flows through an intricate network of pipes, pumps, and reservoirs before reaching its final destination, your home. As a regional agency, the Water Authority secures long-term water resources and oversees conservation planning. The Water Authority also provides water treatment and wholesale delivery for Southern Nevada, delivering treated drinking water from Lake Mead to area water providers, who then deliver water to you, the customer. SNWA helps to ensure safe and reliable water delivery by operating two of the nation's most advanced water treatment facilities, River Mountains and Alfred Merritt Smith. Water quality starts at Lake Mead, the largest man-made reservoir in the nation. Spanning nearly 250 square miles, Lake Mead is also impressively deep. The Water Authority's third intake plumbs these depths to draw the freshest, purest water. The third intake is designed to maintain access to our community's primary water supply, even as lake levels continue to decline.
The third intake extends into the lowest portions of Lake Mead, ensuring that we have access to our water even though the lake levels continue to decline. Now, the deeper water is easier to treat, easier to disinfect, and provides higher quality water to our customers. The pumping station, currently under construction, will work in tandem with the third intake to provide quality water to over 2 million Valley residents.
When the pumping station is completed in 2020, SNWA will have the ability to draw water from the lake, even if lake levels drop too low for Hoover Dam to release water to downstream users in California, Arizona, and Mexico. Once water travels through intake number 3 to SNWA's treatment facilities, state-of-the-art ozonation is the primary treatment process. Ozone provides an effective disinfectant that destroys bacteria and waterborne pathogens. The next step in treatment is multi-stage filtration, which includes a step known as flocculation. Particles in the water form clumps called floc. The floc is so small it can't be seen by the naked eye. Flocculated water passes through multiple filters that trap and remove these particles. Chlorine is then added to the water as it leaves the treatment facilities. Both chlorine and corrosion control efforts further protect the water as it journeys through the pipeline distribution system, sometimes 30 miles or more uphill, on its way to you.
Well, most of our water is delivered by gravity to our customers. This means that we use the natural principle of allowing the water to simply flow downhill. We locate our reservoirs farther uphill from the customers they serve, and thus, when that water just simply flows naturally out of the pipes, we get water to the tap. Also, providing the water uphill gives our customers the adequate tap pressure that they need.
Highly skilled operators guide water through a series of pumping facilities to move water to reservoirs and water tanks throughout the community. Reservoirs provide sufficient storage to meet our home and business water needs, as well as fire protection to support our community's first responders. The Las Vegas Valley Water District, the cities of North Las Vegas and Henderson, maintain more than 100 reservoir basins and tanks that collectively hold more than 1 billion gallons of water. The Las Vegas Valley Water District is building its first reservoir in 10 years.
Well, this reservoir is designed to meet the growing needs of Summerlin. We're about 33 miles as the crow flies from Lake Mead, where we get most of our water, and this will hold about 10 million gallons of water. It takes a lot of energy to pump that water up the hill from 33 miles away. We do that primarily in the evening hours. We don't have the constant droning of pumps, and it helps to reduce costs by using the energy during the evening when those costs are reduced.
To maintain water quality in the distribution system, operators and distribution personnel keep a watchful eye on flows, water levels, system pressures, and pumping activities. They work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to monitor your water quality. Considering the important role that water plays in our daily lives, local water providers in Southern Nevada are committed to maintaining reliable water infrastructure that safely meets our community's water needs. By the time water reaches your tap, it's been treated and tested to the highest state and federal standards.
There are more ways to save, so join us next time here on Waterways. If you'd like to share your conservation efforts at home, contact us at Waterways, 1001 South Valley View Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89153. Or send us an email through our website at snwa.com. We may feature your story. For more how-to videos and tips to conserve and care for our water, connect with us on social media. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time, right here on Waterways.
Win or lose, our children need a natural green grass space in which to run, romp, and be a kid, especially out here in the desert. What is your team color? Ours is purple. We are the Clark County Water Reclamation District. You may have seen workers installing our purple water pipe system at Silver Bowl Park. Yes, purple, the signature color for reclaimed water. The playing fields and landscape at Silver Bowl Park are now irrigated using reclaimed water. This water surpasses the high standards set by the state, saves our potable water for drinking, and reflects our abiding commitment to wise management of our precious water resources. Reclaimed water is the right water for the right use. The Clark County Water Reclamation District, in partnership with the Clark County Department of Parks and Recreation, is pleased to use reclaimed water to provide this green grass space where everybody wins.
Great job! On the next edition of Where Fun Happens, a Wii bowling tournament attracted hundreds of local senior rollers. The County Museum's new exhibit offers an array of amazing artifacts in The Beauty of Purpose, Utilitarian Arts of the Paiute People. And the Clark County Shooting Complex offers more than firearm recreation. Come on out and learn how to use a bow and arrow. Those stories and more coming up on the next edition of Where Fun Happens, right here on Clark County Television.
Do you know when to go on a yellow flashing arrow? They're popping up all over Clark County, and they're the new signal for turning left at intersections with a dedicated left turn lane. Here's what drivers need to know. A flashing yellow arrow means turns are permitted, but you must first yield to oncoming traffic and pedestrians. Then turn with caution. Keep in mind oncoming traffic has a green light. A solid green arrow means turn left. Oncoming traffic must stop. A solid yellow arrow means that the left turn signal is about to change to red and you should be prepared to stop or prepare to complete your left turn if you're within the intersection. And finally, a solid red arrow means stop. These left turn yellow flashing arrow signals are new, so remember, a yellow flashing arrow means turn with caution. For more information, log on to ClarkCountyNV.gov and search keyword flashing yellow arrows.
Community, our home, Clark County, Nevada. Thanks for watching Clark County Television, the best access to your local government.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Bill Brown with Brookings Mountain West. Thanks for coming out tonight. We know there's a lot of competition for your intellectual entertainment interests just on our campus alone. So thanks for joining us on behalf of all of us at Brookings Mountain West for our lecture tonight. I want to give a thanks to our colleagues in Greenspun Hall who allow us to use this great facility and who are recording the lecture tonight. So it'll be up on our website in the very near future and on YouTube, and you may see it on public television at 2 or 3 in the morning if you're so inclined one of these days. We're going to talk, we're thrilled to have our colleague Vonda Feldman-Brown back for another talk. She's spoken to us in her previous visits on such topics as the illicit water economy around the world, the narco drug economy. Tonight we have another uplifting topic, the devastating effect of the opioid epidemic epidemic, which is, we all know, is a problem here in Nevada, across the nation, but around the globe, as you'll hear tonight. I want to recommend to you a book that Vonda has written on a different topic called The Extinction Market, which is a look at another illicit economy, the wildlife trafficking problem around the globe. You know you can't have my copy, but there's one in the library you can fight over if you like. Let me also thank our donors, which includes MGM Resorts, Barrick Mining, Wolfgang Puck, and Brian Greenspun, who help fund us and make all that we do happen. For those of you who haven't met Vonda, and that's an increasing small percentage of the university and local population, she's a senior fellow in the Center for 21st Security and Intelligence in the Foreign Policy Program at Brookings. She also is director of the Brookings Project, Improving Global Drug Policy, Comparative Perspectives Beyond the United Nations General Assembly Special Session 2016 project. And so, as you can gather, she's an expert on international conflicts, non-traditional security threats, including insurgency, organized crime, urban violence, and illicit economies. Like our visiting scholars, she spent time this week in undergraduate and graduate classes, meeting with students one-on-one and faculty to talk about their research and how she can be of assistance in that regard. She received her bachelor's degree from Harvard University and her doctorate in political science from MIT. So let me step aside and invite Vonda up.
Good evening. Thank you, Bill, very much for inviting me back, and thank you all for joining us for the conversation today that I very much want to be a conversation, and I am indeed flattered that you're willing to spend an hour of your intellectual entertainment with us tonight. Entertainment, however, as Bill prefaced, that is in fact on a very grim topic. A fundamental topic for the United States, the opioid epidemic in the US. It's a very devastating health crisis. It is the single worst drug epidemic that this country has ever experienced. That is no small thing to say. The United States has had for decades a voracious demand for narcotic drugs, for drugs that cause recreational highs, that has structured and driven supply of illegal drugs and the threats and harms that such a supply poses around the world for decades. And so to say now that the opioid epidemic is really the worst one that we have ever experienced is a very significant statement. It is also a drug epidemic that had very different origins than the previous ones. And in some ways, like the previous ones, it has very significant international and global repercussions, but the vectors and effects are, again, quite different than what we have seen in prior drug epidemics, such as the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s and 1990s, and the methamphetamine crisis in the 1990s and 2000s. And other drug epidemics. The U.S. story is rather well known at this point, but nonetheless I would like to start with it to some extent because it's crucial for understanding what has happened and what's unwinding, and also because we are at a rather dramatic moment in the U.S. element of that story. And then so two events that those of you who are interested in the topics have perhaps noted over the past week. One was, or 2 weeks. One was that Purdue Pharma, a large pharmaceutical company and the one that's most notoriously associated with the epidemic, settled a lawsuit in Oklahoma for $270 million. Now, the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma that sued Purdue Pharma for its responsibility in the opioid epidemic asked for $1 billion. They settled for $270 million. That may sound like a lot of money, but in fact, in comparison with the scope of the profits of pharmaceutical companies like Purdue, it's actually not that large amount. So that just happened recently. And the other big thing that happened on Monday was that top-level Chinese authorities announced that they were making as controlled substance scheduling all fentanyl class-based drugs. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid like Oxycontin and others that I'll talk about. And this was in some ways a culmination or a first step in what has preoccupied U.S. and Chinese diplomacy, or U.S. diplomacy toward China, I should say, since really the Obama era. Neither of these events will end the opioid epidemic. Neither might be an inflection point, but both are significant moments of the story. With that little bit of a teaser for you, let me now back up and give you some of the facts. How many of you know how many people died in the United States of drug overdose last year? Or how many of you are willing to venture some number, please?
Isn't it around 65,000?
Any other guess?
500,000?
No, thank God, not that yet. So the number last year was 72,000, of which the very substantial portion, at least half, was related specifically to opioids. What are opioids? Opioids are drugs that are it's a class of drugs that is one of the narcotics drugs. It's also drugs that are used for pain relief and during surgeries. So they have very significant and crucial medical effects. Unlike potentially some other illegal drugs that medical communities and narcotics officials deem not to have any medical benefit. But opioids, whether derived from plants like poppy that produces morphine or thebaine or other alkaloids from which drugs, pain relief drugs like morphine are derived, as well as recreational drugs such as heroin are derived. Opioids, synthetic and plant-based, have very significant medical effects. They're used in anesthesia. If you're going to go have a surgery, I hope you don't, but if you will have a surgery, it's really much better to have a surgery with anesthesia and with pain relief than without. Nonetheless, opioids are enormously addictive. And in addition to having these medical benefits, they also cause euphoria, recreational high. And the fact that the body becomes rather very quickly dependent on them, and in addition to becoming dependent on them physiologically, it generates positive psychological states for a while, makes those drugs extremely susceptible for abuse. Now, how did we get to this 72,000 people dying from opioid overdose last year? Well, the year prior, and so this is number from 2017, and I haven't seen the 2018 numbers. There is hope that that number has perhaps leveled off, but essentially for a decade we have been on a steady rise of overdose deaths. That number has gone from 30,000 a year to 50,000 in 2016 to 72,000 last year. And by some predictions, if basic trends do not change, and of course there is a lot of focus on policy interventions, in the next decade we might get in fact to 500,000 Americans dying of them. Now those are enormous numbers. More Americans over since 2000 at this point have died as a result of the opioid epidemic than the number of Americans who died in World War I and World War II combined. The total number of Americans who died during the Vietnam War was about 60,000, in the 60,000. Last year, 72,000 Americans died as a result of drug overdose. And of course, that 72,000 number does not truly capture the scale of the health effects that the crisis is having. Many more people overdose and survive. Yet a crucial element of overdose is that the brain and other organs are deprived of oxygen. So even people who survive an overdose may be severely medically hampered for the rest of their lives. They might never be able to recover. The level of their health might be severely limited and jeopardized. And even people who are addicted, $500 billion, 2.8% of the GDP. That was in 2015, where we were at less than half of the number of deaths that we have experienced in 2017. So again, multiple scale of effects. So what is different about this epidemic than the others? Well, the intensity of the death rates, overdose, and its effect is one difference. But the very important difference is how the epidemic originated. And it originated with legal opioids. It originated with pharmaceutical companies like Purdue, starting in the 1990s, engaging in a very significant marketing campaign that at its heart claimed that the new opioids that they synthesize, like Oxycontin, were not addictive. And the companies were very aggressively pushing this claim by sending sales representatives to doctors to persuade doctors that they had now this marvelous new drug, a very crucial drug of pain relief, who would not be addictive. They spent enormous marketing campaign focused on the entire scope of the regulatory body that should be protecting the US public. I'll speak a little bit later about the international dimensions where a lot of my work focuses, and I want to mention at this point that lots of this work, and particularly the US pharma regulatory failure story, is the product of joint work with two colleagues, Professor John Calkins at Carnegie Mellon University and Professor Keith Humphreys at Stanford, who have been my collaborators on a variety of drug policy projects, and this work also reflects our collaboration. Now, why is it that we go to this stage that the entire regulatory system on the US side essentially collapsed? Well, one dimension of that is that pain is a very significant medical condition. And in the United States, for decades, pain was very significantly undertreated, was very significantly under-recognized. Palliative care was often inadequate. And this is not true just about the United States, it's also true about other parts of the world. I grew up in communist Czechoslovakia, and in the 80s my father was dying of cancer without palliative care. And it was an excruciating, hideous, awful death that should have never taken place the way that it did without palliative care. So I want to absolutely emphasize that, as I will be, and I'm very critical of the pharmaceutical companies, that should not be taken to mean that pain should not be medicated. We should not go back to the 80s and before, where excruciating pain was not medicated. The big problem arose when pharmaceutical companies like Purdue started claiming that the opioids that are enormously addictive will not be addictive, and so it's okay to use them not merely for very significant pain, such as terminal pain in patients, in cancer patients or other terminal cases, but it's okay to use it essentially like Advil. That it's okay to use it for chronic pain because people won't get addicted, and that it's okay to use for relatively minor pain conditions, such as a sprained ankle. And instead, what we know today that opioids like Oxycontin can get people addicted within a matter of days. And so the big difference in this epidemic was that it started through legal means. And in fact, it unleashed an epidemic that the illegal drug market could never and has never succeeded in unleashing. Big Pharma managed to co-opt and really subvert the entire regulatory chain. They spent enormous amount of money lobbying everyone from doctors themselves, particularly doctors who started writing enormous amount of opioid like Oxycontin prescriptions, medical schools, medical oversight bodies, the Food and Drug Administration, all kinds of other independent oversight and regulatory bodies, or who should have been independent and regulatory bodies, ended up under sway. So we ended up in a situation where in places like West Virginia, where you had a community of about 400 people, well over 1 million pills of Oxycontin would be issued for 400 people. Clearly, some massive diversion was going on. When the Drug Enforcement Administration started investigating this case, but clearly it was obvious that massive diversion into the illegal trade, into recreational drugs is taking place. Pharmaceutical companies and drug distributors responded by hiring away drug enforcement agents to work for them and to shut down the investigation. And later on, they lobbied members of US Congress to get to pass laws that prohibited the DEA or significantly hampered the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, in investigating cases such as this, where obviously diversion was taking place. So from the design of the laws to existing regulatory bodies, there were systematic and significant failures and constant deceptions. And truly constant malfeasance. So many of you have perhaps followed the outcry today, where you have museums disavowing donations from the Sackler family, the family who owns Purdue Pharma, to many other lawsuits going on. There is a mega lawsuit in the state of Ohio where 1,600 plaintiffs are suing companies like Purdue, others. It's not just Purdue alone. It's the federal case. Multiple cases are happening at state level. The New York state attorney last week unsealed a major case against those pharmaceutical companies. But the settlements that have taken place, like the one in Oklahoma, and prior fines with which Purdue were charged, have remained on the order of $600 million, $270 million in this scope, where the profits for Purdue are on the order of tens of billions. So for a company that makes $43 billion, to pay $660 million is nothing. It's just cost of business. So the regulatory effect, even of those fines, has been limited so far. But here I want to move to the international dimensions of the story. As the epidemic was unwinding and deaths were mounting on the streets, and first responders had to respond to them more and more, the realization kicked in that the narrative that Oxycontin and other synthetic opioids are not addictive was false. And we have seen a progressive movement to reduce the number of prescriptions that doctors write. Doctors themselves responded, educational campaigns were mounted, policies such as informing doctors that people for whom they wrote prescription overdosed had significant effect on reducing the number of prescriptions. So the amount of supply that was coming from the legal channels went radically down. Yet at this point, there was a vast number of Americans that were addicted, and who no longer had the easy supply to going to multiple doctors and coming out with bags of Oxycontin in their hands. So what happened? Well, of course, they turned to the illegal market. And at first, the illegal market was not able to supply synthetic opioids. Instead, the drug, the use of which shot up, was heroin. And this was the first time in the US really since the late 70s. US heroin market was always very limited. The illegal drugs of choice, in addition to cannabis, were cocaine and methamphetamines. Europe, for decades, focused on shooting up on heroin and was not interested in snorting coke until the late 1990s. In the US, the market was reversed. But the curtailing of the legal opioid supply all of a sudden pushes heroin, demand for heroin in the US up. And one consequence, of course, is that poppy cultivation in Mexico goes radically up. And Mexican drug trafficking groups move into this space now to be supplying heroin. And this generates a tremendous amount of consequences for Mexico itself. The poppy farmers are often enormous